Chapter 135. Groups of dragonflies were flying close to the ground, or circling around the pond. Occasionally, they would touch the surface of the water, and when circles of ripples appeared in the pond, they would nimbly circle around a lotus leaf and fly away without a trace. The dry sand ground was emitting heat, making people feel absent-minded. The sound of cicadas kept buzzing. Wei Wei curled up the leaves that were covered with a layer of soil. Some insects living on the leaves were afraid of heat, so they spat out countless bubbles to wrap themselves in them. The old yellow dog stretched out its tongue and ran to the water basin to lick it a few times. Then it hid under the big locust tree and lay down in the short shadow. It stretched its paws forward, put its head on them, and squinted its eyes. Occasionally, it would look at the unscrupulous chickens in front of it. The fat house cat jumped to the window and curled itself into a ball. Even when the door was opened, it still did not move. The little swallow followed its parents out to look for food. It ate dragonflies and the insects that dragonflies ate. The old yellow dog stood firmly in the circle and looked at the things around it blankly, as if it was recalling the road it had walked. Only its tail kept swinging to drive away the mosquitoes and flies that wanted to come and take advantage of it. Along with the ringing of the bell, it was time for the children who had been studying for 3.5 hours to rest. There was still 3.5 hours before lunch, but the children had already sat in their seats and waited. After a while, someone brought them food. A small bowl of goat's milk exuded the smell of food. There were 2 vegetable buns on the plate and a fried yellow poached egg. This was their lunch break. Originally, they had to do exercises during the break. Later, they found that they were helping at home, playing in the mountains, and swimming in the water, so this was removed. Before eating, the headmaster admonished, one meal after another, think about how hard it is to come by. The children promised in unison that they would study hard in the future and repay the headmaster. Then they began to eat. The headmaster smiled and nodded at the side, reading a book in his hand. Occasionally, he would drink the green bean soup provided by the headmaster to cool down. In the swimming pool in the courtyard of the Zhong family, Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan were lying in it. Their faces were covered with a lotus leaf. Pomegranate, who had finished her work, found a small bench and sat aside to watch. She held a book in her hand and occasionally yawned. These days, she had been thinking about how to plant mushrooms. She was exhausted, but there was no progress. Xiaobao, do you think my family will be able to get some rewards this time? For example, like your family, you can get some food or something, and you can also relax quickly. Wang Huan's voice came from under a lotus leaf. After waiting for a few seconds and seeing that Zhong Xiaobao did not respond, she reached out and touched him. Zhong Xiaobao's body immediately sank into the water. Seeing that the water was about to enter his mouth, he quickly moved and lay down again. Unexpectedly, he fell asleep. Wang Huan had no choice but to repeat her words. Oh, you ask about this? It should be. After all, those grains and poultry were in the name of the Zhong family and Wang family. After so much effort, there should be something in return. The imperial court can't disappoint the people. I just had a dream. In the dream, the 6 ponds here are all connected together. There are several small bridges in the manor, and there are people rocking boats in the water. They are humming tunes while picking lotus seeds in the ponds. There are many small fish swimming and frolicking in the clear water. As Zhong Xiaobao spoke, his 2 legs gently kicked, and his body moved to the shore. He pulled a wooden boat under the shade into the water and pushed it towards Wang Huan. There were snacks and fruit juice on the boat, but for fear of diarrhea, they did not dare to be cold. Wang Huan took a sip of fruit juice and smacked her lips. Then we should design the waterway well. It should be high and low. It's best to directly connect the small rivers in front of the door to the ponds. The water should follow the order, starting from the first pond and ending at the 6th pond, just right to flow into the big river. Remember to pull the net, otherwise the fish will run away. We should also do a winding river. Along the small rivers, build a wooden corridor, and plant some trees in the open space on both sides. It's picturesque from afar and secluded near. As long as we don't occupy fertile land, no one will care. Even in winter, we can drink wine and enjoy the snow. Yes, we can enjoy the flowers in summer. Zhong Xiaobao echoed. Get down. Wang Huan reached out and pressed Zhong Xiaobao down. At noon, the weather was getting hotter. Some people who had nothing to do spontaneously set up stalls by the small bridge. Today's new price had not been announced. Everything was according to last night's price. No one dared to break this rule, otherwise they would be chased out. Ergu hurriedly ate something and was busy again. He checked which stall was selling good food, whether the meat was fresh, and whether the food at the snack store was spoiled. Did they wash their hands when they made the food? He collected the rent from yesterday. After all, they hadn't sold anything today. At the same time, he told a few stall owners that they had left too many dirty things behind when they left last night. He asked them to pay attention today and chat with familiar people. If a family's child could walk, and if a family's pig did not eat, they should go to the tea shop to drink a bowl of tea. When the owner pushed them, they should leave a small bag of salt as the payment for the tea. The number of people eating in the restaurant between the clouds and the water also increased. After Li Cheng looked around for the owner's family but to no avail, he took the Rubik's Cube and came here for lunch. He went up to the second floor, casually ordered a few dishes and iced wine, and asked the waiter to accompany him. The waiter naturally did not dare to refuse. He stood aside and poured wine for Li Cheng. In his heart, he silently said what could be said and what could not be said. Waiter, let me ask you, are you a local? Li Cheng took a sip of wine and a bite of food. He put down his chopsticks and turned to ask the waiter. In answer to your question, I am a local. My family is in Zhuangzi. Including me, it has been 3 generations. The waiter said respectfully as he filled Li Cheng's wine glass and put 2 pieces of ice in it. Then do you know what your master is busy with all day? Why can't I meet anyone? Li Cheng continued to ask. The waiter shook his head blankly. I don't know. How can the owner tell me what he is doing? Maybe something big happened. You should be more diligent. Then, do you know what's going on these days? Something big? Yes, I do know a little. Master's family is very good. I heard that there was a drought and a plague of locusts over there, so Master sent people to bring food, chickens, ducks, and geese over there. The locusts over there are in trouble. You don't know, but the chickens on our farm are different from other places. They start eating locusts when they are young. I still remember that there was a chicken called Old Black. That guy is extraordinarily clever. No matter where the locusts hide. Okay, I know. Larohe is a good chicken. Let's not talk about it first. Is there anything else big? Li Cheng was satisfied at first, but as he listened, he found that something was wrong, so he quickly interrupted the waiter. The waiter stopped and swallowed. Seeing that Li Cheng was asking him, he said, something else big. Yes, the old sow of the little swineherd in Zhuangzi just gave birth. Guess how many? 12 of them. That guy looks so scary. We knew that the pig wasn't normal. It could climb trees. That guy. That's right. Stop, I'm asking you. Don't make up stories. Whose pig can climb trees? Is there anything else big? Li Cheng didn't know whether this waiter was clever or stupid. Oh, that pig can really climb trees. The wind is strong and the tree is crooked, so it went up. Speaking of other things, I heard that a pier was built at the little Luoshui River in Sanshui County. That guy, that place is so big. The whole mountain has been dug up. I heard that when they were digging, they saw a big snake. That guy is about 20 feet long and no one dares to catch it. It just slips on the sand and runs away. That guy. Don't talk about that guy. Let me ask you, how is life at home? Li Cheng finally figured it out this time. This waiter was not stupid, not at all. He was smart. When he was asked about something, he would tell others. When he was not supposed to tell others, he would not leave out a single word. The waiter was still very respectful. He helped to move the food closer to Li Cheng and replied, "It's okay. My family is pretty good today. We raised chickens and put them on the cart to eat the grasshoppers. We also caught 4 piglets. When they grow up during the new year, we will kill one and keep it for our family. As for the other 3, we will sell them for some spare money. Sigh. I don't think your family is doing well. Those pigs can't be sold for much money. Other people will also sell pigs during the new year. It's better to find a new owner. Maybe it will be better. Li Cheng liked this waiter. He was smart and tight-lipped. The waiter shook his head and said, in reply to your question, we don't need to sell the pigs. The owner will set the price and negotiate with other merchants. We will kill the pigs first and sell them at different prices according to different places. It's the same for chickens, ducks, and geese. Aren't you afraid that the owner will cheat you and deduct a part of the price? This was the first time Li Cheng heard that the owner was helping the villagers to negotiate a deal. He immediately thought that the owner was trying to take advantage of the situation. So be it. Let the owner have a good new year, the waiter replied indifferently. This time, Li Cheng was even more surprised. Could it be that the villagers in Zhuangzi were all idiots? They didn't even care about the owner deducting their things. Good. It was impossible to find such honest villagers elsewhere. Furthermore, they were willing to do so. Wouldn't it be better if they all moved to Zhuangzi over there? Hence, he started to bribe them. You know that there's a new Zhuangzi over there, right? The main family of that manor is more powerful than your current main family. Even the authorities have to give them some leeway. Why don't you gather the people close to you and move there together? Once you're there, we'll build a house for you. If you pay a bit of rent every year, the house will be yours in a few years. At that time, if you want to raise chickens, you can raise chickens, and if you want to catch pigs, you can catch pigs. During the new year, we will reward you with a few feet of cloth to make new clothes. Ian, what do you think? You won't be able to find such an owner. When the waiter heard this, he almost laughed. It seemed that the person from Zhuangzi did not investigate the situation here carefully. How could it be compared to the tailor-made Zhuangzi of the Zhong family and Wang family? How could it be compared to the owner's wife personally delivering the goods? Raising chickens? Where could they buy so many chickens? Chapter 136. Li Cheng tried his best to tempt the waiter for a while, but the waiter was still stubborn. Are you sure you don't want to go? Since you know the past, I'll give you the best things. I'll give you the house, some food, and money. You'll be better off than the current farmers. Others will be envious of you. In order to pull the waiter over, Li Cheng promised a lot of things. After the waiter heard it, he poured Li Cheng's wine and said, Sir, I heard a story a few days ago. It said that a shepherd saw a sheep in the wild and said that he would give it something good. In the end, the sheep followed him. When they reached the sheep pen, the shepherd really did that. He gave the sheep the best grass to eat, and the other sheep were envious of it. They ate the worst grass. In the end, the sheep left the next day. The shepherd chased after it and asked it, Why did you leave when I gave you such good things? The sheep said, I thought you would treat all the sheep like this, but I didn't expect you to treat me like this. Once I become like the other sheep, when a new sheep comes, won't we only be able to watch it eat the tender grass? Li Cheng didn't expect the waiter to say this. After listening for a while, he asked, Don't the new people in Zhuangzi treat them well? Well, but they can't be compared to the previous people. You see, I'm a waiter, but if I really fall ill one day, the master will find someone to treat me without spending a single copper coin. The new people need to pay a part of the money. If they don't have it now, they can owe me first. In fact, before winter this year, the master will build a new house for us. Last year, the master didn't have enough money, so he only helped to fix it. We have hands and feet, so we didn't want the master to pay for it. But the master said, The farmer has worked hard for the master, so how can the master let the farmer sleep in the open? The waiter was still so respectful when he said this, but Li Cheng saw a kind of arrogance in the waiter's eyes, which made him a little scared. It seemed that the Zhuangzi of the Zhong family and Wang family were not easy to swallow. Let's not talk about this. This is called the Rubik's Cube in my hand. Do you know how to play? Do you know what will happen when you play the IQ question? I can buy it from you. In reply to your question, this is also the first time I've seen such a thing. I've never played with it before, let alone an IQ test. Even if there was one, I wouldn't tell others even if I knew about it, the shop assistant replied decisively this time. Li Cheng had no other choice. He could only take the items back and let the young master familiarize himself with them as soon as possible. If he could get first place in all 3 categories, then he would definitely get that stupid trophy. He didn't know what was so good about these rewards, but the young master insisted on competing. The meal made him very uncomfortable. He didn't hear any good news, but he did hear some bad news. The Zhong family and Wang family's farmers in Zhuangzi couldn't be bribed, and he didn't dare to use his status to pressure them. After all, Zhangjia Zhuangzi had sent so many poultry. If something really happened, that Yarou Chong, no matter whose son he was, would still go to court. Others would be fine, but he would be sent out as a scapegoat. Even if the emperor chopped off his head, it would be a light punishment. Seeing that he had left, the waiter packed up the remaining dishes and sent them to the new family of 4. It was mainly for the little girl. The restaurant couldn't provide good food for her family, especially when it was ordered by the rich. The cost was not low. On the official road, a man and a woman were running, one in front and one behind. They were about to reach the Prime Minister's residence in Henan Province. The 2 didn't care whether the horses were tired or not, and rushed to the Prime Minister's temporary residence. They jumped off their horses and ran straight in. Yarou Chong originally wanted to go back early, but he found out about Zhangjia Zhuangzi's matter. There were so many poultry eating the grasshoppers, so he had to stop. He didn't dare to take away this great merit. He wanted to know the details so that he could write it clearly in the memorial. When he heard someone report that the people who went to investigate had returned, he quickly called the 2 in for questioning. After learning about Zhangjia Zhuangzi and Zhuangzi's matter, the 2 left. Yarou Chong sat there and wrote some things. He let out a long sigh. He found a copywriter to accompany him. When the copywriter took over what he wrote, he also became more and more shocked. Daren, Zhangjia Zhuangzi's business is not small. They say they are Zhuangzi, but they are doing business. Daren should do something about it. Who is doing business? I'm a proper farmstead and have always been farming. I've never done anything like buying and selling. Selling off the extra things in the farmstead is not doing business. Buying cheap things from other places and then selling them at a higher price is doing business. Yarou Chong felt that the copywriter's brain was a bit slow, so he lightly reminded him. Yes, Daren is right. They are not doing business. There are more poultry coming later. How will Daren arrange it? The copywriter also reacted and said, this kind of business, as long as it didn't fall under his name, no one could find fault with it. On one hand, Yarou Chong was happy that there were more poultry coming, but on the other hand, he was a bit embarrassed. An ordinary person with such a great merit couldn't be directly promoted to an official. How could he help the Zhong family and Wang family get some benefits without being promoted? Looking at them, it was clear that they wanted to eat food. Go and find County Magistrate Cheng. Yarou Chong couldn't think of a way, so he had to ask the County Magistrate of Sanshui County to come over and tell him what to do. After County Magistrate Cheng came here, he had nothing to do. He was idle all day. Occasionally, when he was in a good mood, he would help pick the eggs. However, the other people who were in charge of picking eggs said a lot of unpleasant words. This was clearly a robbery. Daren, you looking for me? After County Magistrate Cheng arrived, he respectfully asked and began to ask about the business. Yes. Yarou Chong held the attitude, snorted softly, and looked away. He seemed to ask casually, Zhangjia Zhuangzi wants to keep the food and Zhuangzi of the Wang family also wants to get one. Don't count on it. I can help with the food, but I can't control the population and farmland. Do you know what they think? They don't care about the people and the land. Then they have to find it themselves. It will cost a lot of money, right? I'm also in a dilemma. Zhong family and Wang family have done a lot of good deeds in Zhuangzi. The reward from the imperial court seems to be a bit too much, right? When County Magistrate Cheng saw that the Prime Minister had relented, he was happy, but his face showed that he was in a dilemma. He wanted to help the Zhong family and Wang family to get more benefits in Zhuangzi. Oh, this is indeed a difficult thing to do. Why don't we let them come here and see if any of the victims are willing to go elsewhere? But we can't give them the land. For the first time, Yarrow Chong showed a difficult expression to County Magistrate Cheng. He also knew that if he were Zhengjia Zhuangzi's people, he wouldn't be happy either. He wasn't an ordinary person who didn't know anything. Naturally, he knew the importance of benefits. After he finished speaking, he stared at County Magistrate Cheng. County Magistrate Cheng held back his happiness and said, "You're right, sir. Zhengjia Zhuangzi should think of a way themselves. They can't ask for benefits from the imperial court after getting nearly 10,000 poultry, sending hundreds of thousands of kilograms of grain, and bringing 20,000 poultry back with carts. They can't think too much when doing good deeds." In fact, his words made it clear that no matter how much Zhuangzi had done, whether the Zhong family and Wang family wanted the Zhuangzi's land or not and whether the imperial court gave it to them were two different matters. Yarrow Chong was a little unhappy with County Magistrate Cheng's subtle threat, but he couldn't say anything. Suddenly, he thought of what the two people had said when they came back, so he said to County Magistrate Cheng, "I heard that the farmers in Zhuangzi are all protective of their masters. I don't know what methods the Zhong family and Wang family used. Could it be that they pressured others when signing the contract?" Yarrow Chong showed a thoughtful expression as he spoke. County Magistrate Cheng admired the Prime Minister from the bottom of his heart. Since he had sent people to investigate, of course, he would know why those farmers were protective of their masters. He was not an ordinary person to ask such a question. The Prime Minister was indeed the Prime Minister. "Sir, I've never heard of the Zhong family and Wang family's Zhuangzi deceiving others to sign the contract. Maybe it's because of generations. If Sir still has concerns, why don't I go back to investigate and report to you when I come back?" "That's not necessary. I believe that they will help with the disaster relief and will not treat the farmers unfairly. There must be some jealous people spreading rumors. Well, I'm going to report this matter truthfully. When the time comes, County Magistrate Cheng will testify. It's already late. Why don't you stay and have dinner with me?" Yarrow Chong had already found out from the two men that the Yamen of Sanshui County was like their own to the Zhong and Wang family. They could even use a 600 li express to deliver good news. If there was really a small matter, then it would be a 800 li express ride, 60 li on the official road and 40 li on the small road, with a change of horses. County Magistrate Cheng hurriedly said that he still had something to deal with and got up to leave. He didn't think that the Prime Minister wanted to invite him to dinner. "Li Cheng, find me more people to figure out this thing. Why is it so difficult? I've been looking at it for so long, but only one side. There are 6 sides in total." In the newly bought Zhuangzi, Li Zun was fiddling with the Rubik's Cube in his hand. He thought that he was smart, but he only managed to figure out one side after a long time. The other 5 sides didn't match at all. If it weren't for the fact that the 6 sides were so neat when he brought it here, he would have thought that he was deceived. Li Cheng was not familiar with this thing, so he could only agree to go out and find people. Ordinary people couldn't do it. Whoever solved the 9 chain rings the fastest would be the one to try. He didn't know who came up with this thing. When Li Cheng went to find people, Li Zun put down the Rubik's Cube and began to think about intelligence questions. He didn't know what intelligence questions were. He thought that it was nothing more than a test to see whose brain was still useful. He found a few people and asked them to ask him some questions. It shouldn't be too difficult. After all, the little boy on the Zhuangzi couldn't know too many things. When the people found couldn't stump him, he was finally happy. He thought that this time he could definitely bring back a trophy and show it to his father. Chapter 137. 2 days later, the poultry from the Zhong and Wang families' farmsteads were transported to their destination. Along the way, there was no lack of worry. Not only did they need to be fed, but they also needed to be fed. These poultry did not have a common owner, and they were not so well behaved. Regardless of day or night, their cries could be heard. There were more than 20,000 birds in total. After they got off the carriage, they did not know where to go. The hens usually gathered next to the roosters, and the roosters were ready to fight with each other. Dozens of birds died on the way. Fortunately, there were no infectious diseases. When the poultry came, it was troublesome to make them work. They were in a mess, and if someone approached them, they would attack. When others were helpless, Cherries came forward. These poultry were all hatched by her alone. Especially when they were young, she had to take care of them for a few days, big and small, batch after batch. At that time, she was exhausted. Just taking care of the eggs made her hands blister a lot. When the poultry saw her, they all wanted to come closer. She was their mother, even if they had grown a lot. After a busy time, the poultry quietened down a little. They did not need to take out the eggs anymore. They directly rushed to other places. They were divided into several batches, and there was food for them to eat along the way. There was no need to worry about drinking water. There was a lot of water on the grasshoppers, and a little dew was enough for them. Including those that arrived first, more than 30,000 poultry were scattered to several places in Henan province where the locust disaster was the most serious. The local people who raised poultry were also grouped together by the government. However, there was a small conflict in the distribution of eggs. It was impossible to clearly distinguish the eggs laid by each household. There was often some quarrels. There were 3 roosters and 2 hens, and he insisted that his family could lay 3 eggs a day. He was only obedient after being warned by the government runners. Cherries did not have so much trouble. She hired a lot of people to help pick the eggs, which could be considered as more income for the people here. There were more than 10,000 eggs every day. Cherries, Xiao Hong, and the others followed the young master's instructions and sold all the eggs on the spot. They could not be exchanged for food, but other things. Wood, dried fish, shrimps, cloth, domestic animals, and some metal tools could be exchanged. This place was close to the Yellow River, and the other side was not far from Shandong. There was an estuary, so seaweed, crabs, and other things from the sea could also be exchanged. In addition to replacing the eggs, in order to urge Yarrow Chong to quickly get the credit for the 2 farms, he specially took 1/10 of the eggs and sent them to other prefectures to be sold. The money from the sale was directly converted into food and shipped over to be evaluated. Yarrow Chong had not returned to the capital, which was not too far away. He wanted to stay here for a few days to see the situation. More than 30,000 poultry brought him great pressure, especially the exchange of eggs. He did not understand, so he asked County Magistrate Cheng. "Sir, are you looking for me?" County Magistrate Cheng asked respectfully after he arrived. At this moment, he was not nervous at all, unlike at the beginning when the arrival of 30,000 poultry gave him a lot of courage. "Well, let me ask you. The poultry of the Zhong family and the Wang family can be exchanged for other things, but why do you keep looking at the things on the other side of the sea? 5 catties of powdered shells and other smelly fish and shrimps can be exchanged for an egg, 7 catties for a duck egg, and 10 catties for a goose egg. Why do they want these worthless things?" Yarrow Chong heard that many people paddled boats in the small Yellow River to pick up these things that no one wanted and were ready to exchange them for eggs, but he could not figure out the reason. County Magistrate Cheng knew the reason. It was to feed the chickens. Looking at the poultry, he knew. They were obviously stronger than the poultry of other places, and at the same time, they produced more eggs. In the various markets of Sanshui County, every night, there would be people coming to pick up food. No matter what it was, they would take it back. In the beginning, he did not know that this was arranged by the Zhengjia Zhuangzi. Later, when he saw that the market was cleaner than usual, he found someone to ask and found out that the bailiffs also helped to pick out the food when they were free. After they dried it, he found out that it was to feed the poultry. He knew it in his heart, but he would not say it. Otherwise, if others found out about this, it would be time to raise the price. The seaside was not his place, so he would not help them. Therefore, when faced with the Prime Minister's question, there was a trace of confusion in his eyes. "Sir, I just found out about this from you." "Yes, why do they want to exchange these things? There is no place to throw these things at the seaside, so who would want them? I think that the 2 Zhuangzi are deliberately giving benefits to the people here. Perhaps they are afraid that the people here will suspect them, so when the time comes, they will take these things back to make dung." County Magistrate Cheng's explanation did not satisfy Yarrow Chong, especially the last part. If they used the powder of shrimp and fish in the river, it was possible, but if they really made dung from the sea, did they want to change the farmland into the middle farmland, and vice versa? The salt was left in the soil. Well, why don't you ask them about this? I heard that some of the eggs are spoiled when they are transported to other provinces, so there is less food to be exchanged. Why don't they transport some salt from there and marinate it? The two zhuangzi will have to pay for the salt, but they can keep some of the food and deduct the salt money. Yarrow Chong thought for a moment, then said to County Magistrate Cheng. This was a disguised benefit for the Zhong family and Wang family. The salt used to marinate things depended on how much salt a jar needed. When the time came, the price would be calculated by the jar. Because the salt was used to help exchange for food in other provinces, the price would be lower. However, after a batch of eggs was marinated in salt water, they would not need to throw it away. In this way, the people marinating the eggs could save some salt and sell the salted eggs at a higher price outside. They could keep some of the food and sell the rest at a lower price. No matter what, they would make a profit. He was the Prime Minister, so he could not let the people keep paying for it. When County Magistrate Cheng heard this, he was happy and quickly agreed, "This official understands. I will go and ask them now and tell them what you said. You are really a good official who thinks for the people. This official is not as good as you." Yes, it is the imperial court and the emperor's favor. After Yarrow Chong finished speaking, he did not want to say anything else to County Magistrate Cheng. He picked up a book and looked like he wanted to read it. County Magistrate Cheng was sensible and immediately said a few words of praise. He left and rushed to where Xiao Hong and Cherries were, ready to tell them the good news. As for the matter the Prime Minister asked, he would say that the Zhong family and Wang family were zhuangzi, but they were unwilling to say. Xiao Hong and Cherries had been busy for the past few days. They had to remember all the eggs they received and pay the workers. They had learned a little bookkeeping from the young master. At first, they were a little unfamiliar with it, but later, they became familiar with it. When they heard the news from County Magistrate Cheng, they did not dare to delay and sent someone back to report the news. At the same time, they exchanged all kinds of eggs for jars and prepared to marinate them. Zhong family and Wang family were also busy in Zhuangzi. They had to arrange the children's affairs. Originally, they were going to start in 2 days, but none of the children could make 6 faces. Not only the children could not do it, but the adults also could not help. Instead, the Rubik's Cube was sold a lot. Zhu Shihu even came to ask how to make it and opened a few to take a look. When he went back, he would ask people to make a lot of them so that he could sell them to other places. When he made money, he would still mix them with Zhongjia Zhuangzi according to the ingredients. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan had been in the swimming pool for a few days. Today, they finally did not go into the water. They found someone to start making a bath and prepared to build a sauna house for their family. The two of them tried hard to think of what stone to use, but until now, they had not come up with a result. Forget it, let's not think about it. Let's try with the My Fan stone. There is no electricity, so we can only heat it up with charcoal and let people pour water on it. Those children have not been able to make 6 faces yet. Should we write a method to remind them? Wang Huan really could not think of what kind of stone was, so she just casually used one. She felt that the My Fan stone was at least not harmful to the human body. Then, she discussed with Zhong Xiaobao whether to teach others how to play with the Rubik's Cube. Zhong Xiaobao had steamed the Rubik's Cube countless times before, but he had never studied it and could not think of a method. He temporarily put this matter aside and said to Wang Huan, "I think there is no need to tell them. At most, it will be delayed for a few days. Since others can find a method, the people of Tang will not be so stupid that they can't find one. 5 days, it will start in 5 days. Let's see which child can make the most faces in the specified time. That will be the winner. At this time, let people go and find those scholars who think they are smart. Then let them watch and hold a competition for adults. The venue will be between the clouds and the water. The purpose of you organizing these competitions is to win over Li Zun. It's okay to spend money, but if you find adults, it will cost a lot. At first, Wang Huan didn't realize what was going on. She was only thinking about the money. After saying that, she suddenly realized something and said to Zhong Xiaobao, "You want to use this to make money? Is it? I knew that you were up to no good. Let others give you advertising fees and rent some stalls. Let all kinds of people who sell snacks come here to promote their own things. Oh, it can be like this. Why didn't I think of it?" Zhong Xiaobao looked at Wang Huan in surprise. Wang Huan did not pay attention to him at all. Her acting was so bad. "Well, that's it. You are right. Now let's not talk about this. What should we do with the brain teasers? It should be suitable for this era and interesting." Zhong Xiaobao changed the topic again. "This is simple. Listen to me. A person is walking on a single plank bridge. Suddenly, there is a wolf in front of him and a tiger behind him. They all want to eat him. He fainted. Let's change to another one. It's easier to understand." Before Wang Huan could finish, Zhong Xiaobao interrupted her. Chapter 138. Young man, do you think it's right? Oh, it's not right. Then I'll change it. It's not right either. Behind the Shuiyun restaurant, in one of the several courtyards that were specifically used for living, the little girl that was arranged by Li Zun was currently playing with her little brother. The little child had just been fed milk today and was currently smiling foolishly. He didn't know what his big sister was saying to him, but as long as his big sister smiled at him, he would smile along with her, and a lot of saliva would flow out. Once the food was served and the pig's knuckle soup was served, the woman had milk the next night. She held the child in her arms and fed him with a face full of happiness. She was in charge of washing the dishes and always washed every plate clean. She never needed to be urged. After washing the plates, she rushed to do other chores when she saw that there were others. She was grateful to that young master Li Zun for giving her something to do, but his status was definitely not low. Perhaps he didn't want someone like her to work for him. She could only try her best to do something for the restaurant. She knew the price of the pig's knuckle. It cost 1 pig's knuckle every 2 days. Even an ordinary person couldn't afford it, let alone a poor family. That young master didn't send anyone to ask about them these 2 days. If the restaurant wanted to deduct something, no one would know. She still had that young master to answer to, but no one would care about Liu Er. She had been eating good food these few days. She also knew that it was the leftovers of those rich people. Some of them didn't even touch a single piece of food. Wouldn't they take it and sell it to others? Wouldn't the waiter eat it himself? A plate full of mutton was sent over. If this wasn't a big deal, what about the clothes that were specially made? It was said that everyone in the restaurant had to wear the same clothes. She and her man wore the same clothes. Liu Er and young man also made clothes for them, especially young man. She was wearing a silk dress. When she put it on, young man smiled comfortably. Many diapers were prepared. When they were brought over, they still had the fragrance of flowers on them. They were specially made for them. Since he was being so considerate, he would feel guilty if he didn't do more work. He even gave young man a lot of toys. He even gave her a cart to teach her how to walk. It was a big circle made of thin wood with 3 poles connected to it. Below the poles were small wheels. There were a few strips of cloth on the circle, and the circle was wider when it was connected to the middle. He could put young man in that place and she could sit there without moving. She could also walk around when she wanted to. There was no need to be afraid of falling. This thing was too rare. He had never seen it before. "Sister Fang, help me bring 20 plates over." Just as she was thinking about this, a waiter in front of her called out to her. "Sai, I'll be right there." Hearing someone call her, she naturally had to go over. She took the 20 plates and looked at them one by one to see if there was a gap. If there was, the restaurant would definitely not use it. Unlike some small stalls, they would continue to put things in even if there was a gap. Waiting for her to bring the plates over, the waiter took them over and looked at her leaving figure. He sighed. "Ghazi, hurry up. What are you doing? Are you planning to do something to her?" A chef was waiting over there to put the dishes. Seeing him like this, he said, "What do you mean? I'm only 15 years old today. After I save more money, I'll find a wife in the future." I feel that his family is really pitiful. Fortunately, they met us. Otherwise, I don't know what would happen to them. That young man just started to put on weight these 2 days. She used to be thin before, the waiter said with emotion as he brought the plates to the chef. The chef put the dishes on the plates and handed them to another waiter. He turned around and said, "There are so many people suffering in this world. Can you help them all? The main family is still better." The one surnamed Lee left her alone. The main family heard about it and specially sent clothes for her. Today, they sent the fattest pork shoulder. I'll cook it in a while and stew it until it's soft. When the time comes, you can hold your breath and drink it in one mouthful. Take some time to go back and check on the 2 children. Don't hurt them. Didn't the main family bring some pictures the day before yesterday? They showed them to Liu and said something like 165. They want us to treat their family well. The main family wants to eat and drink well. They also want to make a midnight snack for Liu. I heard that they want to find a doctor and put it in the restaurant. One is to check on people who are not feeling well after eating, and the other is to take care of Liu. If she's sick, she must be cured. Oh, yes, there is such a thing. Master Ni, please do it first. I almost forgot something important. The main family said that if you don't want the fruits, I'll send them to Liu immediately. I don't know what the picture is. I looked at it for a while but still couldn't understand it. When the waiter heard the cook's words, he didn't dare to delay. He got some fruits and quickly made a fruit plate. He carried it and walked to the small yard. When he arrived at the small yard, he happened to see Liu with her brother turning the Rubik's Cube twice. All 6 sides were correct. He was stunned. He was almost 10 years older than Liu and had played with this for a long time. At most, he could only get one side right. He didn't expect that such a big child could get all 6 sides right. "Xiaoman, now I finally know. It's not too difficult. When I win, I'll buy you something good." Liu's voice woke the waiter up. He quickly walked over and gave her the fruit plate. He said, "Sister Liu, you're so good. You actually got the Rubik's Cube right in one day. Can you show it to me again?" "Thank you, Brother Ghazi. Here, you can mess it up. I'll show you. In fact, it's very easy. I've thought of a way to solve the Rubik's Cube. I'll tell you later. Come, Xiaoman, drink this juice. When you grow up, you'll have strength to work more and be filial to your parents." Liu saw Brother Ghazi coming over to give them fruits and juice. She smiled sweetly and handed the Rubik's Cube to him. She took the juice and fed her brother first. After the shock just now, the waiter remembered that Liu had just messed up 2 parts of the Rubik's Cube and got it back. Seeing that Liu didn't care about him and fed her brother first, he took the Rubik's Cube and spun it vigorously. When Xiaoman finished drinking the juice, he had already messed up the Rubik's Cube. He handed it to Liu and watched her play with it skeptically. His eyes widened. If Liu could really solve it, he wanted to learn from Ishue. Liu took the Rubik's Cube and looked back and forth. Her hands moved quickly. In less than half an hour, she had solved the Rubik's Cube into 6 sides in front of the waiter. She handed it over again and said, "Brother Ghazi, I just figured it out, so it's a little slow. It'll be faster after I practice. I won't play with it after I win the prize. It's not fun." Ghazi took the Rubik's Cube and looked at it carefully. He couldn't see any difference and finally believed it. At the same time, the way he looked at Liu changed. No wonder the main family was so good to Liu's family. He heard that if an ordinary person didn't know the rules of the Rubik's Cube, it would be very difficult for them to solve it. Liu had never learned this before. She brought it in the morning, and it was still bright. In less than a day, she had solved it. What did the person who brought it say? "If you're not smart, don't even think about playing with this unless someone tells you the rules first." "Ghazi, what are you doing?" "Stealing Liu's toy." Just as the waiter was in a daze, Steward Zhong's voice came from the courtyard door. Ghazi was so scared that he immediately stuffed the Rubik's Cube back into Liu Er's hands. Steward Zhong, why are you here? I didn't steal Liu Er's toy. I came to give you fruits. Liu Er just solved the Rubik's Cube. Let me see, it's really amazing. The waiter turned around and explained to Steward Zhong. Okay. Steward Zhong responded. When he turned to Liu Er, he said, Miss Liu Er, don't you have any more toys to play with? The main family thought of this long ago and specially sent you new toys. This is the 9 linked rings. Everyone else is playing with them. There's also this, which you can't find anywhere else. It's called Huarong Dao. Cao Cao is trapped. You need to use the least amount of effort to move these things and let Cao Cao escape from this place. The main family said that it would take at most 2 days. At that time, they will send you new toys. At night, a father and son will come to teach you about historical facts. There are still 5 days left. When the time comes, the competition will begin. The main family said that historical facts, Rubik's Cube, and intelligence are all prepared for you. You can at least get first place in 2. Liu Er, the main family said that as long as you want something, the main family will do their best to give it to you. Tell me, what do you want? After the housekeeper finished speaking, Liu Er and the waiter both had different expressions. Liu Er didn't understand why the main family of the Zhong family was so good to her. She looked at the 2 new toys in front of her. The 9 linked rings seemed to be able to be removed when one was alone or in pairs. When it was time to put them on, it could be reversed. The waiter was no longer as shocked by Liu Er as before. He suddenly thought that no matter how good Liu Er was, could she be compared to the young master and the young lady? The housekeeper's words had explained everything. The main family was actually just the young master and the young lady. They were actually able to come at this time, and this was the moment when Liu Er had just faced the Rubik's Cube. Thinking about what Liu Er said just now, she wouldn't play with it after she won the prize. It wasn't fun, it was too easy. The young master and the young lady had even calculated this. The new toys were also sent. Compared to this, Liu Er was really nothing. Good. Fortunately, I didn't have any second thoughts. When Li Cheng came, I didn't waver at all when he gave me benefits. Otherwise, the young master would definitely know. If he wanted to beat me to death, the government wouldn't go after him. The whole family had an irrevocable contract. Even if it wasn't an irrevocable contract, it would still be the same. Liu Er, have you thought about it? This is the first time the main family has treated someone like this, Steward Zhong asked Liu Er again. Chapter 139. Liu Er's thoughts were interrupted by Steward Zhong's voice. She smiled shyly and said, I don't want anything. I just want my parents and young man to eat and wear. We don't have anywhere to go now, so we'll stay here first. When we have the money, we'll build our own house. I was looking at the 9 consecutive rings just now. It's not that I didn't want to answer you. When Steward Zhong heard Liu Er's words, he felt that he was starting to like this little girl. She was always thinking about others and not herself. However, she didn't know that she was the one that the young master and young lady really liked. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given her so many benefits. He thought about what the young master said when he asked him to come over and asked, Liu Er, did you think that if you want to get all the rings, you have to go up in pairs? That's right. Actually, it can be said that if you want to go up, you have to go up first. If you want to go down, you have to go up first. If you want to go up, you have to go down first. If you want to go down, you have to go up first. If you want to go up, you have to go down first. If you want to go down, you have to go up first. If you want to go up, you have to go down first. If you want to go down, you have to go up first. Liu Er nodded seriously. She looked at the housekeeper differently. She felt that the housekeeper was thinking the same thing as her. Steward Zhong really couldn't feel this resonance. At this moment, he was thinking the same thing as the shop assistant. The young master and young master were really meticulous. They even knew what Liu Er was going to say in advance. Although there were some differences at that time, the meaning was the same. Uncle Housekeeper, I really don't want anything. Are you angry? Liu saw that the housekeeper didn't say anything after she finished speaking, so she asked worriedly with tears in her eyes. I'm not angry, I'm not angry. Liu is such a good child. Why would I be angry? Uncle was very happy. After Liu finished competing, there would be other teachers coming to teach Liu in the future. There would be some who specialized in arithmetic, some who taught calligraphy, and some who taught physics. When the time came, the main family would give Liu a few books to read. Liu, don't worry about the house. The master has already said that before this winter, he will build a beautiful house for Liu's family. He will also make winter clothes for Liu. As long as Liu studies hard. The housekeeper didn't dare to let Liu cry. The two young masters had said more than once that they had to make Liu happy. Why are you treating us so well? Liu was a little surprised by the Zhong family's care for her family. She found it unbelievable. Just because you are a good child. Uncle likes good children the most. When the time comes, you can go to the school in Zhuangzi to have a look. If you want to learn there, you can learn from them. If you feel that the teacher speaks slowly, I will specially find a teacher for you. Steward Zhong naturally couldn't say that this was the little lord's arrangement, so he could only find an excuse. Liu had a high IQ, but that did not mean that she had a high EQ as well. She only felt that the people at Zhongjia Zhuangzi were all good people who helped her family, and they never considered themselves. Meng nodded and said, Uncle, don't worry. Liu will definitely study hard and repay Zhongjia Zhuangzi when the time comes. Xiaoman, why did you pee again? Look, you have dirted someone's car. Liu didn't forget to take care of her brother while she was talking. As soon as her brother peed, she picked him up, smiled at Steward Zhong and the shop assistant, and walked into the house. Steward Zhong, of course, knew what to do. He looked back at the shop assistant and said, Ghazi, remember to take good care of her family, especially her. The little lord ordered me to do so. I know. I will take some time to come and see her in the future. The shop assistant didn't expect the little lord to treat her so well. He nodded and left with the housekeeper. At the same time, he was thinking that Liu was indeed different from ordinary people. Not only did she solve the Rubik's Cube, but she also seemed to know how to solve the 9 consecutive rings at a glance. He also had a 9 consecutive rings at home. Usually, he would just mess around with it. He would either take the ones that had already been taken down and put them back on, or he would just stick a few poles together. Was she still a 6-year-old girl? No wonder the little lord valued her so much. She has such a high IQ. She is almost catching up with me. Xiao Bao, what is your IQ? Wang Huan looked at Pomegranate, who was making some rice noodles, and asked Zhong Xiaobao, who was reading next to her. Isn't it good to be high? She will have someone who can do things in the future. I feel that it is a bit unfair for such a person to be a talented girl. At least, she should be a female CEO in several government departments, such as the Jidushi. It's just that one is in charge of military and administration, while the other is in charge of business. I know you have a high IQ, a master's degree at 14 years old. I can't compare to you. I have a low IQ. Who with a high IQ would go to prison for no reason? I am an honest person. I just want to make a living. The food in prison is free. At most, I have to do some work. Sometimes, you can't even find a place to eat even if you want to work. Zhong Xiaobao put together a lot of powdered seasonings. He was making 13 spice. He had learned this before. He didn't learn it in prison. He learned it from a person who sold 13 spice. At that time, he had just left the orphanage. After the flood, he heard the person selling 13 spice sang well and followed behind him. In the end, that person pitied him and brought him along. Later, he was hit by a car and died. The driver ran away. He reported it to the police. After they understood his situation, they ignored him. He knew that the person who had hit him was not an ordinary person. He had no choice but to continue wandering. As for what happened in the future, of course, it was simple. The person who had hit him was also hit by a car in the end. The car was the same model, And even the license plate was the same. In the same place, Zhong Xiaobao was like that. He would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. As an orphan who had suffered so much, why would he care about morality and the law? Who would show him the justice of the law? Wang Huan didn't know what Zhong Xiaobao was thinking at this time. She nodded and said, "Oh, yes, there are more people with low IQs. Those who have been cheated by you don't have high IQs." Among them, there was a 26-year-old doctoral student who was a deputy minister. How did it happen? At that time, he was praised by the news again and again. Yes, it must be the tragedy of the education system. I firmly believe in this. Otherwise, why would that fool build a primary school in an area where landslides are common for political achievements? It's so far away from where the child lives. It takes more than an hour to drive. He specially built a road. If he didn't cheat him, who would he cheat? He only took more than 9 million yuan from the school, the road, and the school bus. Why would a person with a high IQ spend so much effort to steal such a small amount of money? Zhong Xiaobao disdainfully curled his lips. He sniffed the 13 spice he had just made, suddenly turned his head, and sneezed. Wang Huan looked at Zhong Xiaobao's appearance and suddenly laughed. I believe you. His IQ is indeed not high. Who with a high IQ would smell 13 spice? You seem to have less ingredients here. You don't understand. Sneezing can ease the tension in the body. Who said 13 spice has 13 kinds of spices? I helped to sell 16 kinds of spices. Later, he taught me 2 more. It's just that it's not easy to get them. It depends on what you cook. I will mix them according to different recipes. When Zhong Xiaobao talked about 13 spice, his hands moved differently. He took a piece of paper from the side and a small spoon to mix the spices. He put the paper on one side and began to put the spices on it. He swung the spoon steadily. He didn't put more spices on one side, more or less. Wang Huan was stunned when she saw his movements. She felt it was strange. However, Zhong Xiaobao not only moved, but also started to talk. Winter is short, and summer is long. You are always busy. If you want to eat vegetables and sweat, remember to add some fennel. You can pay for 2 yuan. I don't want your 2 yuan, but I want 1 yuan. Don't say that I don't put enough. If you eat too much pepper, it will hurt your stomach and intestines. Zhong Xiaobao seemed to have returned to the time when he was helping the person who brought him to sell 13 spice. His little hands moved faster and faster, and his little mouth sang more and more smoothly. Pomegranate was making noodles when she suddenly heard the little child sing something she had never heard before. She stopped what she was doing and turned around to look. Seeing the little child like that, she felt that he was even cuter. He seemed to be selling spices, but he could sing so well. Wang Huan opened her eyes wide. It was the first time she heard someone sing like that. She had heard a person sing in a skit nearly 100 years ago. She felt that it was not as good as Zhong Xiaobao's. Her every movement or expression would be seen by Zhong Xiaobao. He would immediately change the way he sang, making it sound so sweet. He was an international swindler. Who would have believed that he could sing the 13 Spices song so beautifully if he were to do so? As she listened, Wang Huan's eyes turned red. She thought of what kind of scene it was at that time. Other children were beside their parents acting like spoiled children, but Zhong Xiaobao was guarding a place surrounded by cloth. He sat there, with open cloth bags in front of him. He looked at the various expressions of the people around him to see who wanted to pay and who was just watching. He tried his best to grasp the various attitudes of those who wanted to buy more, and those who did not want to buy more, to pay more. You won't lose out if you buy it for 1 yuan. You can buy garlic, but you can't buy ginger. Look at my 13 spice. I'll give you a jar for 2 yuan. If you think it's still not enough, give me more. I won't bargain. Looking at the paper in Zhong Xiaobao's hand, he folded it into a funnel shape when he was singing, and it was almost filled to the brim. He knew how much profit he would make. If he sold such a big bag, it would be different from the boxes bought at the supermarket. He might only make a few cents. What kind of life were they living back then? Seeing how Zhong Xiaobao had already immersed himself in it, and how he would put in less of a few special items each time, and frown slightly every time he put in more, they knew that those items were expensive. It was really not easy to put in so much effort for such a small amount of money. Wang Huan finally couldn't control her tears and shouted, "Stop singing. I'll buy it. I'll buy it all." Chapter 140. Sister, don't worry. Others are still waiting on the side. Although the 13 spice is good, you can't put too much of it. Buy a pack and you can eat it for half a year. Half a year later, I will come back to sell the 13 spice. Zhong Xiaobao was still thinking about the idea of selling the 13 spice, so he didn't react for a while. With a special smile on his face, he added 2 spoonfuls of things to the paper. "Xiaobao, are you still going to make instant noodles? You only put these things. Did you put salt and monosodium glutamate?" "Stop." Wang Huan wiped her tears, squatted down and stopped Zhong Xiaobao. She stared at his eyes and said, "Oh, yes, I am going to make the instant noodles stuffing bag. Hee, I forgot. I thought I was going to sell the 13 spice. Let's keep these for cooking. There are too many big ingredients, so they are not suitable for making instant noodles stuffing bag. When we offend an unreasonable and powerful person and have no way to live, I will sell the 13 spice, and I will definitely make a fortune." Zhong Xiaobao was stopped by Wang Huan. Only then did he remember that it was not the days when he sold the 13 spice anymore. Wang Huan nodded with red eyes. She touched Zhong Xiaobao's face and said, "Well, I believe you are the best. When the time comes, I will sell it with you." Who is Zhong Xiaobao? He is an awesome person who can summon the wind and summon the rain. Who dares to talk about money in front of you? Who is qualified to talk about suffering next to you? Do we still need to make the sauce packets? Let's not make this. At most, we can make some dried vegetables and dried meat and put them together. If you want to sell the sauce without packaging and with ceramics, how much will it cost? If it doesn't work, we can put the sauce into the noodles and fry them together. Didn't we agree that we will make 1 copper coin for 2 servings? We can give it to those who have a long way to go. There will be no shortage of nutrition. Zhong Xiaobao thought for a while and proposed a new idea. He smiled at Wang Huan and told her not to worry. "Well, then put it in the noodles. When the time comes to fry it, it will definitely taste good. You can't put beef in the meat and vegetable buns. Otherwise, you'll suffer a huge loss. Tell me, have you ever polished shoes? In the future, when I have leather shoes, I won't have to bother to clean them. If I want to find someone, I'll find a professional." Wang Huan also returned a smile and whispered to Zhong Xiaobao. She was too curious about Zhong Xiaobao's past. "I've really used it before. When I was using it on a child who was about my age, he even gave me the new ice cream he bought. It was very sweet. It's okay if you don't know how to use it. I'll teach you." Zhong Xiaobao put aside the bag of seasonings in his hand and whispered to Wang Huan. "No, I'm stupid and have a low IQ. I believe in you. I want to make a pair of small brown buckskin boots. I'll leave the maintenance to you." Wang Huan replied with a smile. At this time, Shiliu had already turned her body around. She was humming the song that the little lord had just sung while rushing to cook the noodles. These noodles had to be made into thin slices, and when the time came, they would be fried in the wok. She did not know what the little lord and little lady wanted to do. What was instant noodles? It would taste good. Putting the noodles into the pot to fry, and then putting them into the pot to cook, then it was better to bring some noodles and seasonings. Why did they have to fry them first? She really didn't understand. Anyway, the little young master and his wife couldn't be wrong. It didn't take too much time for Pomegranate to roll the noodles into a ball. She took it to the kitchen, boiled the oil, put the dough in, and fried it. After a while, the noodles turned brown and a fragrance floated out. She fried 20 servings in a row. After that, she emptied the oil and put it in a big plate. She brought it back to Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan and asked, "Little young master, little young lady, the instant noodles are ready. How do you eat it? It's done so quickly." "Well, I'll tell you how to eat it. You go and get a big bowl. It's better to get a small one and bring it here. Cut some braised meat and fresh vegetables. Don't forget the salt and MSG. Also, bring some hot water. Zhong Xiaobao looked at the fried noodles and asked Pomegranate to get the things. Pomegranate moved quickly. It didn't take long for her to bring the things Zhong Xiaobao asked for. She waited at the side to see how to eat it. This time, Zhong Xiaobao didn't have to do it. Wang Huan rushed to do it. She put the noodles into the big bowl, put the meat and vegetables in it, and finally left some chopped scallions alone. She let Zhong Xiaobao mix some seasoning and threw it into the bowl. She added hot water, covered the small bowl, and waited there. The fragrance in the bowl slowly rose. Pomegranate sniffed and swallowed her saliva. She couldn't wait anymore. After about a quarter of an hour, Wang Huan said to Pomegranate, "Okay, you can take the small bowl. Be careful, don't burn it. Put the scallions in, mix it, and it's ready to eat. Try it." With the permission of the little girl, Shiliu couldn't wait to walk over and pick up the small bowl. She sprinkled a few pieces of scallions on it and mixed it with her chopsticks. Then, she took a bite and nodded in satisfaction. "Little young master, little miss, these noodles are so delicious. There's a smell of shredded meat noodles." It turns out that little young master and little miss want to eat shredded meat noodles. "You just need to tell me. It's easier to make than this instant noodles." Pomegranate's words made Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan speechless. "Xiaobao, tell Pomegranate which is more convenient. I don't understand." Wang Huan pushed this difficult task to Zhong Xiaobao. Zhong Xiaobao had to prove the advantages of this instant noodles compared to shredded meat noodles. It was easy to store, convenient to eat, and good to eat. It could be soaked in water, even cold water. Without water, it could be dry chewed. It tasted better than fried noodles, and it was not easy to swallow. If conditions permitted, it could be carried along with fried noodles. Pomegranate was convinced by the little young master's eloquence. She felt that what the little young master said was true. It just took a bigger space and was more expensive than fried noodles. However, the things put in here were better than ordinary fried noodles. The most important thing was that this thing could be eaten as fried noodles when it was made into foam. Fried noodles couldn't be cooked as noodles. Moreover, no one would put this kind of dried vegetable in fried noodles, let alone match the little young master's seasoning. "Little young master, little miss, I know. Do you want me to make this thing? I have to find 2 people to help me. The fungus has grown up again." Pomegranate suggested to Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan that they should help her. Wang Huan shook her head. "You don't need to do it. I just want you to try it. It's the same as the dough. Let others make it. It's not something precious. Then I'll go find someone. Do I need to ask others to make the seasoning?" Pomegranate was relieved. She could devote more time to studying the cultivation of mushrooms. "Don't tell others about the seasoning. Let Xiaobao make it. Although there are only a few things, it takes a lot of knowledge to match them. Make more and send them to our own restaurant. These 2 things can definitely make the dishes taste better. You go find someone to make noodles." There was no way Wang Huan would agree to give the 13-spice formula to someone else. She saw that when Xiaobao was packing the ingredients onto the paper, some of the bigger bags didn't contain more than one side. Only 2 of the bigger bags seemed to contain more valuable items. This definitely wasn't as simple as it seemed. He had just randomly mixed the ingredients together. Especially after that, he kept adding more ingredients. When one was done, he would definitely add another. According to the bipolar theory, it was the balance of yin and yang. According to that scientific theory, the combination of these 2 things could neutralize the harm to the human body. At the same time, it was the same for the taste. For example, sometimes if there was too much vinegar, it was necessary to add some sugar. Of course, Pomegranate wouldn't refute. When she heard the order, she ran out. She wanted to find someone to make more, so that Zhuangzi would have another source of income. "Okay, we can take a break. Let's go and swim. There's a child in Zhuangzi with an IQ of 60. What should we do? No wonder he studies so hard but his grades are not good. Do we need to test the children in Zhuangzi? If there's a good one, we can poach him. After Pomegranate left, Wang Huan pulled Zhong Xiaobao to the back and asked as they walked. Zhong Xiaobao, on the other hand, did not look down on a child with an IQ of 60. Most of the time, IQ was not everything. Everyone had their own talents. It all depended on whether you could find them and whether you were willing to spend a lot of energy and money to nurture them. Let's test them. We can't bury the really outstanding people around us. Usually, it's easier to cultivate people with good IQ. That Liu just wanted to give it a try. I didn't expect that she would succeed. The Shangguan family got their household registration and registered them as Zhuangzi. Zhong Xiaobao looked up at the sky. He felt that it was especially stuffy today. He said to Wang Huan, "Later, let's find an old man and see if it's going to rain. Also, let's see if the ants will move. Then we can't go to the swimming pool." The ants in the yard have all been burned to death by your lime. It's good that it's raining, it's cooler. The ground is about to crack. We always sprinkle water on the ground here, but in other dry places, there might be holes. It's a pity that we don't have the smelting technology and can't make a good water pipe. With what we have now, it's better to make a closed iron pipe than to drink water. It's too expensive. If we had that pipe, we could use it to heat the air in winter. Wang Huan raised her hand to wipe the sweat on her forehead. She quickened her pace, wanting to jump into the pool as soon as possible. 3 days passed quickly. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan gave Liu some tangram and other intellectual toys. Liu learned very quickly under the guidance of the teacher who taught her alone. She didn't need to learn how to write. She only needed to memorize the historical events. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan didn't want Li Zun to get the trophy in the end. It would be easy for him to become arrogant and feel that he couldn't compare to the children here. They only wanted him to get a single trophy. At that time, he would need to prove himself and move on to the next step. During these 3 days, the heavens finally sprinkled rain. For 3 consecutive days, there was no heavy rain. Instead, it drizzled continuously. The water level of the small river gradually rose. Everywhere was moist. However, the rain came too late. It couldn't solve the problem of the drought. Some people were even afraid that it would rain again when the food was ready. Chapter 141. Zhong Xiaobao stood in front of the window and looked at the rain that seemed to never stop. He muttered, "Now we don't lack water anymore. I wonder if those places that have matured earlier are like us. When it's time to harvest, they don't need to harvest the crops in the fields anymore. They can just germinate and wait to be planted. That shouldn't be the case, right? If that's the case, the price of food this year will increase by a lot. It's impossible for the whole country to have rain at the same time. It's just like how other places don't have droughts. The drought-stricken places have already failed, so it's not that bad. When the time comes, we can wait for the imperial court to provide relief. Li Longji is still a good person in the early stages." Wang Huan was also annoyed by the endless rain. It was mainly because the house was damp and they couldn't go to the swimming pool outside. It was fine if they stayed in the house and did nothing. If they wanted to read, they had to light up a lamp. Zhong Xiaobao felt that he was indeed a little worried. The lack of food had nothing to do with Zhong Xiaobao and his family in Zhuangzi. Naturally, there would be people who were worried. He couldn't just buy some food now and sell it at a fair price. He had already achieved his goal of seeking credit for his family, so there was no need to continue to worry. As for buying food at a low price and selling it specifically for the sake of benefiting from the country's disaster, he didn't plan to do so. He wouldn't be able to earn much money. It was unlike the food that was sold during the drought. The quantity of food was not much, only a few 100,000 catties. He could take the opportunity to increase the price. If he wanted to make a fortune here, he would need at least tens of thousands of tons. It was easy to be targeted by others. If he sold too much, he would lose his credit, and he wouldn't be able to live in peace. "Xiaobao, why don't we use an umbrella to catch fish? It should be easier to catch fish at this time. I heard that it's easier to catch fish when it's raining." Wang Huan was a little annoyed by the air pressure. Seeing that Zhong Xiaobao didn't say anything, she suggested from the side. That depends on the type of fish. Even if we don't catch them, we'll catch them in our own pond. It just so happens that after 2 days of rain, the ground is already moist. We can get people to connect the 6 ponds. At this time, the construction is easy. We can dig a hole at a time. Zhong Xiaobao didn't want to catch it. He and Wang Huan could only drag a very small net, and they couldn't throw it far. They didn't know how long it would take to catch one on the shore. As for fishing, there was no need to think about it. If they met a slightly bigger fish, they could drag the 2 of them into the water. That's a good idea. Let's see how many straw raincoats and straw hats there are in the grocery store. Give them to the farmers and let them dig ditches. We'll take care of their meals. Give each of them 3 copper coins as wages. Let the doctors in Zhuangzi make some medicinal decoctions so that they won't catch a cold. After hearing Zhong Xiaobao's words, Wang Huan agreed and immediately arranged it. The farmers were also idling at home. When they heard that there was work to do, the laborious at home all brought their tools out. They didn't care about the wages and food. Their only wish was to do something for their master. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan didn't continue to stay in the house. Accompanied by Pomegranate, they held a large umbrella and ran to the small river in front of the courtyard to watch the water slowly rise. Between the clouds and the water restaurant had a lot fewer guests. Only a few outsiders who didn't want to rush back in the rain continued to stay in the courtyard behind the restaurant. However, the market wasn't affected. It seemed that there were more people than usual. Most of these people were mainly here to sell vegetables. Vegetables were not afraid of being drenched by the rain. After getting wet, they looked more green. Ergu gave a slightly higher price and lowered the price of fruits. At this time, the usually sweet fruits were no longer sweet. When evening came, the rain finally became heavier and was accompanied by the rumbling of thunder. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan didn't seem to hear such a loud noise and still got up to study. Pomegranate also didn't sleep today. She sat at the door and yawned as she watched the 2 young masters study. From time to time, she was scared by the thunder and trembled. She only calmed down when she saw that the lights were on in the inner and outer rooms. In the courtyard of the Shuiyun house, the family of 4 had not yet fallen asleep. Young Man was always crying. As the older sister, she had to hold her in her arms, recite the things she had learned, and coax her younger brother. The 2 adults, on the other hand, were whispering to each other. As Wang Huan said, it didn't rain everywhere. In Henan Road, there was still not a drop of water. Xiao Hong and Cherries were calculating under the window. These days, they had collected a lot of eggs. Some of them were directly pickled, and some were exchanged for things on the same day. They tried not to keep them as much as possible. Otherwise, there would be no place to put them. Yarrow Chong had sent 2 reports in a row, but there was still no reply. He didn't know how long this matter would be delayed. He already planned to leave early tomorrow morning. County Magistrate Cheng was also arranging for people to pack up and prepare to leave at dawn. After all, Sanshui County couldn't be without a county magistrate. Only the merchants who also came with food to get some benefits didn't have the slightest intention of leaving. They hated Xiao Hong and Cherries in their hearts. Not only did they bring so much food at one time, but they also used those eggs to exchange for food in the provincial government outside to lower the price here. The people who came to sell the grain made a lot of money. These people wanted to get more benefits, so they took out the money to buy more grain. When they came back, they found that the local people were no longer as crazy as before. Almost all the local government had posted notices saying that a large amount of grain would be shipped over soon, and they should not buy at a high price. Ernu was not like them. He didn't listen to the young master and sell the food in his hands. He directly rushed to Shandong without any hesitation. He had more tasks. In addition to continuing to carry stones, he also had to go to the seaside to buy kelp. He spent the money, dried the kelp, and transported it back to Zhuangzi. 2 days passed quietly. While the children were waiting, the sun came out in the morning. Perhaps God also knew that the children were anxious. Last night, there was a thunderstorm, but before dawn, it became a clear sky. All the children of the appropriate age in Zhongwang's Ji manor were ready. Each of them had a Rubik's Cube. In total, there were 55 people. Some families didn't have children, so the adults came to watch the fun. Some families had 2 children of the right age, so naturally, they came holding hands and waiting for the competition. In addition to them, there was also the young master of the Li family, Li Zun. His team was the most spectacular. Together with the foreign children who heard the news and signed up, there were more than 80 people. In particular, there were 2 children who were scholars who usually talked about poetry in the restaurant. The father of these 2 children may not have done well in the imperial examinations, but when it came to educating them, he was not bad at all. They started practicing calligraphy when they were 3 or 4 years old. Now, they were 11 or 12 years old. After so many years of writing, they had a good foundation. The appearance of these outsiders made the children of Zhuangzi feel a great deal of pressure. They felt that the first place of the 4 categories was going to slip away from their eyes. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan knew about this situation. The 2 of them discussed for a while and decided that they would not take any remedial measures. It was good to let the children of Zhuangzi see how good the others were. Otherwise, they would always think that they were better than others just because they knew a few words. After seeing the gap, it was good that they would work harder in their studies. A small number of children who were discouraged could be corrected through some persuasion. The 2 of them were looking forward to seeing Liu the most. They wanted to see how she would perform this time. The competition was about to begin. The venue was the open space in front of the restaurant between the clouds and the water. Someone had already paved the ground with sand. The tables and chairs were neatly arranged, and the 4 treasures of the study were placed on top of them. The children were all sitting on the chairs, looking around from time to time. They seemed a little nervous. There were many people watching from the surroundings. There were farmers of Zhuangzi, adults who had brought their children from outside, and those bored scholars who were sitting near the windows of the restaurant. The first category of the competition was the Rubik's Cube. It was originally supposed to be a calligraphy competition. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan were afraid that if the children of Zhuangzi lost, they would not be able to show off their skills later on. They did not expect them to win first place. It was fine as long as they could perform well. On the roof of the 2nd floor, Zhong Xiaobao was being carried down by 2 servant girls in the courtyard. There were several ropes tied around his body to prevent the 2 of them from accidentally falling down. Today, the roof of the 2nd floor was not open to the public. Xiaobao, I heard that there are 2 children from outside who are good at calligraphy. Do you think that Li Zun will lose to them? If Li Zun does not win even once and becomes jealous of this competition, we will end up making a fool of ourselves. Wang Huan looked at the situation below and turned her head to give Zhong Xiaobao a look. Her lips moved as she asked Zhong Xiaobao. It shouldn't be, right? No matter what, he was educated in that kind of environment. The teachers he hired are also better than those from other places. Calligraphy not only requires practice, but also comprehension. He is definitely more mature than other children of the same age. Zhong Xiaobao was actually a little worried. What if Li Zun, this child, was too timid to win and did not display his original ability? If he really lost, then it would be troublesome. Future plans would need to be adjusted accordingly, and the effect would also be reduced. While they were talking, the competition was about to begin. All the children's Rubik's Cubes were collected and arranged in the same order. Then, they were sent back to each child. With a command, the children all worked hard to turn the Rubik's Cubes in their hands. Some of the children were anxious. The more they worked, the slower their progress would be. Li Zun was the most stable of the bunch. When he received the Rubik's Cube, he first glanced at the others. He felt that he would be able to win this competition. The people from his family had worked together to figure out the Rubik's Cube. He didn't believe that others would have such ability. Both of his hands were fiddling with the Rubik's Cube. The strength of each stroke was just right. He would never let the Rubik's Cube get stuck because of his strength. Just as he was about to face the Rubik's Cube, a young girl on the other side shouted, "I'm done." Chapter 142. After this sound, the other children stopped what they were doing and turned their heads at the same time. They saw a little girl in red holding the Rubik's Cube high in the air. Her wrist moved back and forth so that the people around her could clearly see that she was facing all 6 sides. The mental fortitude of the children was not as good as that of the adults. When they saw that someone was the first to come out and the first place was gone, some of them could not help but cry. Originally, they had planned to wait for the incense stick to burn out so that they could come out stronger than the others. Now, all hope was gone. Only 2 Zhuangzi from the Ji family were crying. The Zhuangzi children from the Zhong family and Wang family who had seen the Rubik's Cube turned back and continued to fiddle with the Rubik's Cube in their hands. It seemed that the first place had not been decided yet. When one of the people who came with Li Zun saw this, he couldn't help but frown. If some of the children from the Zhong family and Zhuangzi were doing this, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, they were all doing the same thing. This could only mean that they had learned something. Well done, this is how the people of our Zhong family and Wang family should act. When others have reached the end, they should still work hard. There can be first place in the Rubik's Cube. On the road of life, one should never give up until the moment of death. Xiao Bao, it seems that we have succeeded. What we have taught them is not only knowledge, but also the principles of life. Wang Huan was satisfied when she saw this scene. These children made her feel that she had spent a lot of money to nurture them and that they had not failed. Only those who could endure loneliness and work hard while watching others succeed were the most suitable people for survival. Zhong Xiaobao didn't say much. He nodded and continued reading. Li Zun took a deep breath, but he didn't throw away the Rubik's Cube in his hands. He was as calm as ever, and his hands didn't even tremble. He knew that he had lost first place, but he couldn't learn from those kids and stop. If he did, then it wouldn't be as simple as a failure. He had his own glory. After the incense stick burned out, all the children who were still working hard stopped their actions and placed their Rubik's Cube on the table. Some only managed to get 1 face, while some didn't even get a single face. The one who was slightly better was Li Zun. He actually managed to get 2 faces and 2 lines. He was only missing the middle one. Usually, he wouldn't be able to reach this level. Under Steward Zhong's instructions, the servants brought out iron plates one by one in front of the children. Their names were written on the plates. As for those who gave up, they had also prepared plates, but they would not take them out now. Even if some of them had already gotten 2 faces, they wouldn't give them anything. Some of the sensible adults around them understood that these children who gave up couldn't compare to the children who didn't even get 1 face but still persisted. Ignoring the crying children, the second round of the competition continued. This time, it was a calligraphy competition. Li Zun was as steady as before. When he started writing, his mentality didn't waver at all. On the contrary, the 2 children who were originally good at calligraphy had lost some confidence because of the previous competition. Even if they could write well, they couldn't write well. Liu who had won the first round, was also writing. She had never learned how to write, and she didn't even know how to read. What she did now was very simple, and that was to stand up and watch others write, especially her benefactor. Li Zun had learned Wang Shiji's handwriting, and his strokes were graceful and strong. At this moment, his mind was completely immersed in writing, and he didn't notice that there was a little girl beside him watching. Liu wanted to greet him, but when she saw that her benefactor didn't even look at her, she knew that it wasn't a good time to disturb him. She could only continue watching. When she saw that her benefactor had written 12 words, she turned around and ran back to her table. She picked up her brush and recalled her benefactor's handwriting, and began to write as well. When the first word was written, it was rough. When the second word was written, it was fine. When the third word was written, it was impossible to tell that it was a word. When the 12th word was written, it was like drawing a picture. It was as if Li Zun had drawn Li Zun's words, even though she didn't recognize them. When she finished writing 12 words, she ran over to take a look again. After looking at a few words, she came back and continued writing. Some of Song Jinggong's friends also came over to take a look. When they saw one, they shook their heads. When they saw the handwriting of the two children who had been relatively good, they shook their heads and said to the people beside them, "She can't make up her mind." What a pity. When they came over to Li Zun's table, they were stunned for a moment. They said to the people beside them, "She's getting a bit mature. After a few more years of practice, she'll be able to compete with those who have been practicing hard for decades." When Liu came over to take a look, the few of them followed her back. When they saw what Liu had written, they prepared to leave. This child didn't know how to write at all. She had no foundation at all. But just as they were about to leave, they suddenly saw Liu write another word. This time, he had no choice but to stop. He pulled the person beside him, who had already turned around, and said, "Brother Jiao Peng, look at this child. Look at her from the beginning to the end." After he said that, the others also became interested. They turned around and looked again. Liu was also paying close attention. She couldn't be distracted at all. She didn't know that her benefactor was writing the poem of the pavilion of Prince Tang. At this time, he was writing, "How many autumns have passed?" The few of them watched her write. When the last word was written, before Liu could continue to look at her benefactor's handwriting, the person who was called Brother Jiao Peng couldn't help but shout, "Good. You've learned well. From the first word, you can tell that this little girl has never written before. When you write the word autumn, you actually show some handsomeness. Little girl, what's your name? How old are you this year? I want to take you as my disciple. Are you willing?" As he spoke, he started to ask about other people. He wanted to take in a disciple. This was a talent. As soon as he said that, the others were unwilling. They all fought to take in a disciple. Liu was scared. She left her seat and ran to Steward Zhong's side. Only when she pulled on Steward Zhong's sleeve did she feel safe. The two guards beside Steward Zhong were already standing in front of him. One of them happened to be blocking half of Liu's body. The guards that the young master ordered to take care of her didn't dare to be negligent. At this time, Li Zun finished writing the last word. He put down the pen and felt that his whole body was exhausted. Looking at his handwriting, he smiled. He didn't know what had happened to him today. Not only was he able to solve 4 sides of the Rubik's Cube, which he usually could only solve 3 sides of, but his handwriting was also better than before. He shook his wrist and looked around. He happened to see Liu, who was hiding beside Steward Zhong. However, he couldn't tell that she was the person he had helped before. Back then, Liu's clothes weren't good, her body was thin, and her small face was sallow. Now, she looked completely different. Li Zun only remembered that she was the first person to solve the Rubik's Cube. With someone protecting her, Liu wasn't afraid anymore. She blinked her big eyes and looked around. When she saw that her benefactor was looking at her, she thought that her benefactor was still thinking about her. She pulled one of the guards over to Li Zun and knelt down with a thud. She kowtowed and said, "Liu greets you, benefactor. You're so good at writing so many words. Please get up." "You are." Li Zun tried hard to remember who this little girl was, but he still couldn't figure out who she was. He asked in confusion, "Benefactor, I'm Liu. That day in front of the restaurant, you gave my family a lot of food. You even asked the restaurant to take care of us. Benefactor, you're a good person." Liu panicked when she saw that her benefactor didn't remember her. After her reminder, Li Zun finally remembered that there was such a thing. Looking at her appearance now, she knew that the restaurant had taken good care of her. Her clothes were made of silk, her shoes were made of satin, and her small face was rosy. He quickly said a few more words and comforted Liu. The second round just happened to end, and the third round was about to begin. It was the IQ round. This time, more people were needed. Every child had a person beside them to answer questions. If they could answer, they would move on to the next question. If they couldn't answer, they would tell the answer and move on to the next question. The children had never heard of such questions before. A person washed his clothes for a long time, but his clothes are still dirty. Why? He washed someone else's clothes. An object has 4 legs, but it can't walk. Why? Because it's a table. Such questions were asked one after another. Most of the children were dumbfounded. They had never come across such things before. The best was Liu Er. After answering 3 questions incorrectly, she finally understood how to answer such questions. She answered 6 of the last 7 questions correctly. Li Zun also finished his experience after getting 5 questions wrong. Out of the remaining 5 questions, he got 3 correct answers, ranking second among everyone. At the same time, he also felt that this kind of question was really too fun. He immediately called the people around him and asked them to ask these questions and record them down, leaving him to ask others. Liu Er won 2 rounds. Even if she didn't win the last round, she wouldn't lose. The rest depended on whether Li Zun could win the last round. He was first in calligraphy just now. The last question was about history. Liu Er learned a lot from the teacher she found. Before the questions were set, she wasn't given any reminders. The person who set the questions didn't know her either. This ensured that it was fair. This time, not everyone asked questions. Instead, it was a race to answer. The winner would be the one who answered. There were a total of 20 questions. If someone answered more questions, they would have to add more questions to those people. They would continue to race to answer until the winner was decided. At this moment, Liu Er finally showed the outstanding side of her high IQ. She reacted quickly and learned quickly. She answered 5 questions correctly in a row. When she saw that everyone was looking at her in shock, she suddenly remembered that her benefactor had wanted to speak several times, but she had snatched the opportunity away from him. In order to repay her benefactor, she definitely wouldn't snatch any more questions. Li Zun caught up from behind and answered 9 questions correctly. The remaining 3 questions were not answered by anyone, and the remaining 3 questions were answered by the 3 children separately. Just as Steward Zhong was about to announce that Li Zun won, Li Zun took off the jade pendant on his body and said, I lost. Liu Er won. Liu Er let me win. Liu Er, take this. If you have something difficult to do, take it to the Zhuangzi of the Li family over there to ask for help. At the end of his sentence, Li Zun had already stuffed the jade pendant into Liu Er's hand. He found that Liu Er was indeed smart. He didn't help her for nothing. At least she knew how to be grateful. Just as he was about to turn and leave, Steward Zhong approached him and said, Young Master Li, Master has something to ask of you. He says it's something that concerns the people of Tang. Chapter 143. It's related to the people of Tang? Li Zun, who was about to leave, couldn't help but stop when he heard this. If it were other things, he could refuse. No matter how powerful the main family of Zhuangzi was, Zhong family and Wang family were nothing in his eyes. If they wanted to invite him, it would depend on his mood. However, Steward Zhong said that he could only listen and see. At least his surname was Li and he had a special identity. He had to care about this kind of thing. If he really did it, he would definitely be praised. This was what he wanted since he was young. Child Li, this way please. When Steward Zhong saw Li Zun's expression, he knew that he wouldn't refuse. He stretched out his hand and led the way to the restaurant between the clouds and the water. Li Zun looked at those children again and nodded. He followed behind with several bodyguards. He believed that the Zhong family would never dare to lie to him. Those children didn't win even once. Just when they were unhappy, many people came out of the restaurant. Each of them had a plate in their hands. There was something on the plate that looked like an egg, but it was wrapped in a layer of paper. No one knew what it was. There were 5 plates in front of each child who had persisted in the 4 games. As for the child who lost confidence and quit halfway, there was only one. The waiter, Jiaozi, was in charge of the explanation this time. He stood in front of the crowd and picked up one of the plates. He said to everyone, "This is called a century flower egg. Look, it's an egg made by Zhuangzi in a special way. Look, doesn't the texture on it look like a century flower?" As he spoke, Jiaozi walked in front of the crowd with the egg in his hand. When they looked at it, they found that it was indeed the case. It was clearly an egg, but it was actually black with some red and some yellow. It was like a jelly that had been boiled. It trembled slightly and was covered with pine flower patterns. They had never seen this kind of thing. They all stared at the waiter, waiting for him to continue. Look, you can't eat too many of these eggs. You can only eat 1 or 2 at a time, and you can't eat them every day. You may not know what this thing tastes like, but it's fine. I'll cut some for you to try. After Kaz walked around in front of everyone, he called the others who followed him out to cut up some century eggs. Each one was cut into 8 equal pieces and served to everyone on a plate for them to taste. Some people were too precious to risk their lives. They picked up the food and looked at others. Zhangjia Zhuangzi, on the other hand, did not have such concerns. They did not believe that the host family would harm them, so they picked up the food and ate it. A special taste entered their mouths. They all nodded and praised, saying how delicious this egg was. I finally made the century egg today. Xiao Bao, let's eat century egg and lean meat kanji tomorrow morning. I'm craving it too. Wang Huan lay beside Zhong Xiaobao and smacked her lips. Zhong Xiaobao shivered. I'm not eating. I don't like to eat this. It smells bad. If you want to eat, eat by yourself. Don't drag me along. I can tell that you don't know how to enjoy life. If you don't want to eat, then forget it. I'll eat by myself. I can tell that you don't have the life to enjoy life. Wang Huan was different from Zhong Xiaobao. She loved to eat century eggs, especially those made with traditional techniques. Unfortunately, she did not know how to eat them. Zhong Xiaobao, who knew how to eat them, did not eat them. She could use this thing to make porridge or directly cut it into strips. In the past, when she ate, it was the most appetizing. She could even eat 2 more bowls of rice with 1 dish after mixing some tofu. Since she was young, she had heard that this thing had various harmful effects, but it had never appeared on her body. The only thing that made her feel regretful was that most of the eggs she ate were made directly with a special process. There was no lime, rice husk, or mud on them. They were clean and looked no different from ordinary eggs from the outside, but the taste was much worse when she ate them. The people below did not know how this thing was made. When they saw someone eat it, they also ate it. Some said that it tasted good, while others said that it tasted bad. However, the texture and aftertaste were much better than ordinary eggs. Seeing that they were eating happily, Zhong Xiaobao was also happy. Even if he did not eat a single bite, he said to Wang Huan, the only problem with making this thing is that it will be difficult to preserve the eggs in the future if there are too many of them. Other than salted eggs, only century eggs can be preserved for a longer time. Salted eggs take up space. After a certain time, they have to be taken out, boiled, and thrown into salt water again. It's troublesome. Tell the people in the courtyard to be careful and not leak the recipe. All the mud, rice husk, lime, and salt must be washed away with water. Those things that are removed can be thrown into the manure pit. Add more things. It's good to make fertilizer. I knew that you wouldn't use other methods after doing this. How much are you planning to sell 1 egg for? When Zhong Xiaobao was making the century eggs, Wang Huan had persuaded him several times that this thing was not bad and had many benefits. In the end, he did not waver and could only give up. Now that the century eggs were done, they were considering the problem of price. 5 copper coins for 1. Zhong Xiaobao gave a price that could scare people to death. You actually shouted such a high price for such a small amount of salt water, lime, rice husk, and mud. Many ordinary people can't afford such flowers. A goose cub is only worth this much. Moreover, it needs a female goose. Do you see that? Females are worth a lot. Wang Huan did not expect that Zhong Xiaobao would dare to set such a high price. The cost of a century egg was less than 1 copper coin. He wanted to earn 400% profit. Zhong Xiaobao was not thinking like Wang Huan. The value of a female goose shows the strength of a male goose. In a flock of geese, only 1 male goose is needed. Not only does it have to help the female lay eggs, but it also has to ensure the safety of the female goose. The price cannot be changed. No matter how good a century egg is, how can it be compared to steamed egg cake? How can it be compared to a fried poached egg that is fried to medium well? Those without money can eat some eggs, but they are usually boiled. I don't see it as a food for the masses. Many people like to eat spiced beef, but how many people can really afford it? Do those without money have to buy century eggs to eat? It's not salt. It's a necessary consumable. It's just 5 copper coins. It depends on what kind of egg it is. Some eggs with more century flowers and more red color are sold for 10 copper coins. Widening the gap, it would be a waste not to earn money from those people. You are a capitalist. When you are chasing after profits, your heart is black. Wang Huan agreed with Zhong Xiaobao's words. The nutritional value of century eggs could never be compared to raw eggs. Both types of eggs required vinegar to sterilize, especially aged vinegar. However, she still had to refute. After all, high profits meant high risks. Some people could not stand others living well and would think of ways to cause trouble. Everyone knew how much an egg was worth. If it was really sold for 5 copper coins or 10 copper coins, the consumers would not say anything. They liked the taste, but some people would have bad ideas. Zhong Xiaobao naturally knew what Wang Huan was thinking about. He advised, "What will come will come. Unless you don't want to develop, you can't run away from the things that you need to face. If anyone dares to have ideas about this, I will sell them the recipe. It's just a century egg. I will let them know that they might not be able to get any benefits even if they spend money. We can just announce the recipe secretly. If we sell 10 copies of the recipe, they will definitely want to know who leaked the secret. The day after we sell their recipe, we will increase the price of the recipe by a few copper coins. Do you think they won't suspect us? I will. The first person I suspect is you." Wang Huan replied with certainty. "Yes. What did you learn? Will they also learn criminal psychology? Will they also know some of your experience? Are you scared now? Then don't lie to me in the future. What goose? Do you eat honey? Do you know who has the highest status in the honeycomb?" Wang Huan shook her head happily. Zhong Xiaobao naturally knew what kind of social structure the honeycomb belonged to. He looked at the proud Wang Huan and said, "Actually, you don't have to be so secretive. You can just talk about Wu Zetian and that Empress Dowager Xiao. They are not ordinary people. Fortunately, we are here. Otherwise, with your personality, you might have trampled everywhere. Okay, let's not talk about this. Let's talk about that Li guy. Do you think he will fall for it? Oh, no, will he cooperate with us? Absolutely no problem. This is a new way of thinking. The more you think you are at the top of the pyramid, the more you think about these things." Li Zun, who was being schemed against, did not know that there were 2 people upstairs talking about him. At this moment, he was completely focused on something that could affect the entire Tang dynasty. Father Zhong had personally come to discuss this matter with Li Zun. He could not let his son and daughter-in-law appear in front of others. Originally, he seemed to be more introverted, but now, he was very active. In the eyes of others, it was a bit inconceivable. However, Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan understood that the reason why he was so introverted was because he wanted to study hard and amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. In fact, his heart was not like that. Father Zhong did not have much to say about his son. If he had to say what he felt, it would be pride. At this time, facing Li Zun, he slowly explained his son's thoughts. The matter was not troublesome. In fact, it was very simple. That was to invite Li Zun to help organize and participate in a children's activity in Sanshui County. It was divided into 3 categories. One was a grassland, one was a desert, and one was a flatland. They needed to conduct survival training in these 3 places. Each category lasted 5 days. Adding on the running back and forth, it would take about 25 days. As for the forest, it was too dangerous, so it was cancelled. According to Zhong Xiaobao, it was to let all the children adapt to various living environments and strengthen their bodies. The children's ages were chosen between 8 and 12 years old. Chapter 144. The more Li Zun listened, the more he felt that it made sense. In this way, Many children would be able to receive training. He thought about it according to his own living environment. Usually, he would also do some training, such as riding a horse, archery, and so on. After all, Imperial Uncle was better in this aspect. As a nephew, if he wanted to be appreciated, he had to learn from him. At this moment, an opportunity was in front of him. Li Zun absolutely could not refuse. After agreeing, he set the date. The first event was the grassland. The only difference was that Li Zun did not set a time limit of 5 days. Children between the ages of 8 and 12 should be given 10 days. At the same time, no one knew what he was thinking. He actually allowed children between the ages of 5 and 8 to participate. The time limit was set to 3 days. Naturally, there would be someone to take care of them at night. As for the older children, they would have to rely on themselves. Father Zhong knew the identity of this child, so naturally, he would not stop him. With such a person around to protect them, he believed that the child would not have any problems. The location of the grassland was also chosen. On the Luochuan County on the other side of the Luoshui River, there was a pasture with a few thousand horses. There were not many of them, and the pasture was not too big. It would take less than half a day to cross from the south by horse, and it would also take less than a day to cross from the east to the west. After discussing the matter, Li Zun left and returned to Zhuangzi with a medal. The other children also followed the adults home. The lively day was finally over. When it was almost night time, the people who often came to the restaurant had a new idea after seeing the children's competition. They proposed to hold such a competition, especially the quiz on intelligence. They felt that it was very interesting. At first, it was a little confusing, but after they found out the answer, they thought carefully and felt that there was some truth in it. In the end, they directly asked for the entire second floor of the restaurant to be reserved, including the top floor. In the eyes of others, this matter was just a kind of simple entertainment. When Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan heard the news, they had a different idea. Today, the two of them did some publicity for some small places nearby and received 1 tael or 3 qian worth of silver. It was a good start. Knowing that there were more adults who wanted to do the same, the two of them gathered together to discuss, hoping to gain more benefits. Xiaobao, come and take a look. This is the blueprint that I designed. It's specifically for the placement of advertisements. On the road outside, we have to place a row of advertisements. On it, the names of the shops that are willing to spend money will be written. 1 advertisement costs 50 copper coins a day. Is that expensive? Wang Huan pushed a piece of paper with a drawing in front of Zhong Xiaobao and asked. Zhong Xiaobao's drawing skills were much worse than Wang Huan's. Although it was said that he was better than Wang Huan, when it came to concrete matters, he couldn't compare. He looked at the flag designed by Wang Huan and shook his head. This flag is not bad, and it can even flutter in the wind. But this way, our cost will increase a lot. Using cloth to make a flag will make less money. Most importantly, it flutters when there's wind. When there's no wind, people won't be able to see the pattern and words on it. This needs to be changed. We don't need cloth to make it, we use paper instead of dye. It can also be held up. Use a small stick to weave the frame of the flag and stick the paper on it. If the wind is strong, we can make a few holes on the paper so that the paper won't be damaged. Even if it's damaged, we can make another one. This is the second time, and the scale is bigger than the previous time. The price can't be too high. How about 30 copper coins a day? 50 copper coins is a little too much. That's not a small amount. I really don't want to earn the money of those merchants. It's not easy for everyone. If Zhong Xiaobao hadn't said the last sentence, Wang Huan would have really believed him. But when he said that he couldn't bear to earn money, Wang Huan began to pout. Scammers were all bad. Just like how crocodiles shed tears, who would believe that they pitied the animals they ate? Indeed, before Wang Huan could say anything, Zhong Xiaobao began to draw. From time to time, he would pick up a brush and draw a few lines on the paper. When he was done, Wang Huan leaned over to take a look and felt that it was a waste of materials to make this thing. Why do we need 2 flagpoles for a flag? Isn't the cost high? That 2-meter-tall flag can only be taller if we find bamboo poles. The more bamboo poles we put, the more money we have to spend. When Wang Huan saw Zhong Xiaobao sitting there and looking at the painting, she asked, "That's not what I mean. Your 2-meter-tall flag only needs one pole. Mine is 5-meter tall, and the frame is different. We can stick cloth on it. It has to be big, the bigger the better. It's best if it's 3 meters by 3 meters, or 3 meters by 2 meters. We can put it in front of the road from Zhuangzi so that everyone can see it at first glance. First, we'll make small flags for others to see. We'll follow the road and come here. 30 copper coins per flag. If that's not possible, 20 copper coins will do. When they're done buying this position, we'll make a big flag. At that time, we'll let them compete for this position. We don't need a lot. We just need to put one at regular intervals along the road. It's just a piece of cloth." The starting price is 200 copper coins a day, 300 copper coins for 2 days, 350 copper coins for 3 days, 1,500 copper coins for half a month, 2,500 copper coins for 1 month. What do you think? Zhong Xiaobao said his idea and waited for Wang Huan to praise him. Wang Huan looked at Zhong Xiaobao and was stunned for a while. "I think you're dreaming. Those people are not fools. You spent a day brainstorming, and they're buying a position for 1 month. Moreover, you didn't mention the big flag at the beginning. When they're done buying small flags, you make a big one. What about the next time? Can they still come here? You don't understand. The small flag can be said to be a discount. For example, it can be extended. For example, it can be cheaper the next time, right?" Zhong Xiaobao was very familiar with this kind of thing. He didn't need to have any skills at all. Anyone who had come into contact with it would know. Then, will anyone buy it in a month? The longer the time, the more money we can earn. If I were a businessman, I wouldn't buy a position at this price. At most, I'll make a flag in front. What can you do? It's even bigger than yours. Wang Huan continued to nitpick. To be precise, she wanted Zhong Xiaobao to say what was on his mind. She didn't believe that Zhong Xiaobao wouldn't have considered this. Zhong Xiaobao looked at Wang Huan and said, all right. I'll tell you. You won't let me leave any sense of mystery. The main reason is that I'm afraid you will think that my method is too immoral. For that competition, you can directly finish it in 1 day. Of course, you can drag it out for 10 days to half a month. You can have the preliminary round, the semi-final round, the round robin, and the final round. Every competition has to be done separately. Not all of them can be done at the same time. This way, there won't be many competitions in a day. You can rush to answer, you can answer. You have to introduce the contestants, right? What if they have some good poems? You can't miss the opportunity to show your face. I understand now. Each match takes an hour, and with the addition of jesting, there are only a few matches in a day. The more people there are, the more matches there will be. Don't tell me you're thinking of inserting some advertisements at crucial moments. Wang Huan finally remembered those entertainment programs. Usually, she didn't have the opportunity to watch them as she was busy with work. Occasionally, she would glance at them, but when she felt that they were boring, she wouldn't watch them. Now that Zhong Xiaobao mentioned them, she recalled those things and understood Zhong Xiaobao's idea. No. Advertisements definitely can't be inserted. If you insert advertisements, what will the contestants do? They don't have the tools to record it. Zhong Xiaobao rejected the idea of inserting advertisements in the middle of the competition and continued, there are also prizes. Why don't you say that the prizes are the 4 treasures of the study? Such a good opportunity, let's give it to those places that sell paper and ink. We will allow them to give us money and use their things as prizes. Also, we can put something on the waiter's clothes. For example, the name of a certain shop. It's best to keep it for ourselves. The restaurant in Little Luoshui also needs advertisements. Am I too kind? You are too shameless. If it were me, I wouldn't provide you with those things. What can you do? Wang Huan once again found loopholes for Zhong Xiaobao based on some of the ideas of the people of this era. Zhong Xiaobao put down his pen and put his two small hands behind his head. He leaned on the chair and looked at Wang Huan from the corner of his eyes. This is the wicked method that I want to talk about. What method? Wang Huan turned Zhong Xiaobao's head to face her. For example, there can't be only one place that sells stationery, right? Especially in the bustling streets of Sanshui County. I haven't asked around, but I think there should be 3 or 5 shops. We will send people over to buy. We need to buy a large amount of ink and paper, but we don't need so many inkstones, otherwise it will be a waste. When you ask people to buy, they can go to one shop and choose. The people next to them can say that the other shop should be better than this one. Why don't they go to that shop and have a look? These people will go to another shop and talk back and forth, but they won't buy. Line up a few more groups of people and let those few shops feel indignant. Then, find someone to buy it. This time, buy it for real and pay for it. Find the shopkeepers of those few shops and ask them whose goods are better and whose price is cheaper. Then, choose the worst shop and give a good evaluation. Make sure to say that the good things of other shops are bad and the bad ones are good. Zhong Xiaobao paused when he said this. Wang Huan immediately asked, that is to provoke hatred between them. Or rather, to let them know that the person who bought the goods is a fool. Can you get them to come here? Don't be anxious. Listen to me. This time, we will order some goods. After that, we will leave. Immediately send some people over and continue to discuss the matter of buying things. If we want to buy things and send them to little Luo Shui for the scholars to use for writing, we must let these shopkeepers understand. Zhong Xiaobao drank a mouthful of water and explained to Wang Huan. Chapter 145. When Wang Huan heard Zhong Xiaobao's words, she still didn't fully understand. Normally, this would be the time for the people from the restaurant between the clouds and the water to come over to discuss. However, looking at Zhong Xiaobao's intentions, it seemed like he had other plans. Then how will this help us? We can't just go back and forth like this, right? When the time comes, do we really have to buy so many brushes and inks? We won't be able to use them. Then how is that possible? I'll just buy a batch at a time. I'll buy some from a few shops and get someone to return them when I get back. I'll just say that the scholars over there feel that the brushes and inks from these shops aren't good, so it's better to buy them from outside. The things at Little Luo Shui must be bought from outside. Why? Of course it's to pull some strings. We'll get some people with real power in the province to introduce us to a seller. We'll buy them from there. It might be more expensive, but we'll just treat it as a gift. At that time, they would definitely be very angry and send people from the Shuiyun Club to discuss the matter of buying the goods. They would say that there would be a lot of scholars going there to compete, and they would decide to use the goods from the Shuiyun Club. They would ask a person from a shop in another county to join in as well. When the time comes, they'll propose to give the items for free and even give money. The goal is to let the scholars in Sanshui County know which shop has better goods. What do you think the local merchants will do? This time, Zhong Xiaobao explained all the arrangements. Wang Huan nodded vigorously and gave him a thumbs up. Amazing. Aren't you tired? Just for such a small matter, we still have to buy a few more times and find a shill. Is it worth it? What will we do when we buy so many things? Wang Huan admitted that Zhong Xiaobao's plan was quite perfect. First, he provoked the local merchants. Then, he made them lose face at Little Luo Shui. Of course, they wouldn't return the items they bought, unless it was agreed upon from the start. However, that way, it would be easy for them to notice. The shill who appeared at the end was the most powerful one. This was not only a matter of face, but also related to future business. After doing this, just to get a little bit of the 4 treasures of the study, Wang Huan felt that it was not worthwhile. Zhong Xiaobao really didn't know why Wang Huan couldn't think about it more, so he continued to explain, it's not as simple as just once. People nowadays don't have the habit of sponsoring others. Let's make a start. In the future, when Little Luo Shui and Between the Clouds and the Water organize any activities, others can follow this example. This is called cultivating the customer's consumer awareness. Those brushes, ink, and paper can be used in the school in Zhuangzi. Didn't I mention that you don't want the inkstone anymore? It's just that it consumes too slowly. As long as you don't break an inkstone, you can use it for a few lifetimes. Oh, why didn't you say so earlier? I got it. It's just a small matter, so you can arrange it. Now, let's talk about the big matter, and put the small matter aside. Let's talk about the person who should be the future prince. What should we do? Wang Huan felt that she was a little slow in reacting to this matter, so she unreasonably classified this matter as a small matter and started to change the topic. Let's see what he's going to do first. Our Zhuangzi will cooperate. Let's go swimming. If it's a small matter, just let me know when you have time. Zhong Xiaobao wasn't at the point where he had to suppress Wang Huan in this aspect. That would be purely asking for trouble. Therefore, the two of them ran to the swimming pool when the sky was about to turn dark, and came out again to take a shower. Zhong Wang's Ji San's children, who had participated in the competition in Zhuangzi and won a small iron medal, had a good meal tonight. Don't look at the cheap iron medal. In the eyes of the adults in the family, it was a big deal. Also, the century eggs that they obtained were all left for the children to eat slowly. The adults only tasted one mouthful and then stopped eating. Today, there were already a few outsiders who went back and bought many century eggs. They were all peeled and bought back. If they didn't peel them, they didn't know what the inside of the eggs looked like. Each egg cost 7 copper coins. If they bought a good one, it was considered a profit, but if they bought a bad one, it was a loss. When the 3 Zhuangzi adults found out about this price, they couldn't bear to eat the century eggs that the children won. When the sensible children saw that the adults didn't want to eat, they didn't eat either. In the end, the family of 5 didn't eat a single century egg, and each of them tasted a little. When the children from Zhong Wang's and Wang's families who participated in the competition came back, they received additional rewards from their families. This time, they were directly given money, 10 copper coins per person, so that they could bring it back to their families. This was suggested by Wang Huan. She was touched by the spirit of these children that never gave up. As for the children who cried and made a fuss when they saw Liu win, no one knew if they would be beaten when they returned home. At that time, when the adults compared their children to the children from other families, they were so embarrassed that they couldn't bear it. The others didn't think that their children were immature. They could only blame their parents for not teaching them well. The children's competition was over. In the end, Liu wasn't the only one who won. She naturally received a lot of things, money, and that big trophy. The biggest victory was the collective action of the children from Zhong Wang's and Wang's families, which shocked the middle-aged man who came with Li Zun. When he went back that day, he told Li Zun about this matter. He was the teacher that Li Zun's family found for him. When Li Zun heard this, he was stunned. He didn't expect that such a simple matter would contain so much information from his teacher. He immediately ordered himself to set up a school in Zhuangzi and find good teachers to teach the children in Zhuangzi. He didn't believe that his Zhuangzi couldn't compare to the children from Zhong Wang's and Wang's. Wasn't it just giving things? If others could give, so could he. He could give even better things. Next time, he would find a chance to compete and see who was better at Zhuangzi. After this matter was passed down, Li Zun began to busy himself with the matter of raising the children of his motherland. This was a challenge for him, but it was also a way to curry favor with his family. He wrote up a lot of invitations and had them sent to the families with good conditions. He also had people post notices all over Sanshui County. Every family with children knew about this matter. They were to send their children to the courtyards behind between the clouds and the water restaurant to settle down. When the time came, they would register. At this time, Li Zun had already treated between the clouds and the water as his own. When he met Father Zhong today, he didn't forget to mention that he wanted to buy the restaurant. In the end, Father Zhong rejected the idea on the grounds that the owners weren't present yet. How could he sell something that his son and daughter-in-law had created? For the sake of fairness, The scholars who wanted to play intellectual games in the restaurant decided not to choose one of them to set the questions. Instead, they found Steward Jong and asked him to set some questions. They were willing to pay for it. Steward Jong didn't expect that these kinds of questions could make money. He happily came back and told Zhong Xiaobao. Unexpectedly, Zhong Xiaobao directly rejected the idea of selling the questions. He and Wang Huan wrote hundreds of questions that were suitable for adults and asked Steward Zhong to send them over. Now, they couldn't let others know about it. Each question was put in a separate envelope. On the envelope, the words between the clouds and the water restaurant were written. The words between the clouds and the water were also written under the notes inside. This was Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan's plan. How much money could they make to buy the questions? In the future, as long as everyone liked to play this kind of game and could come up with their own questions, then as long as someone mentioned intellectual questions, the first thing that came to mind would be between the clouds and the water. It was truly amazing to infiltrate the brand of the company into the culture. The next afternoon, the people that Zhong Xiaobao sent to sow discord between the various merchants also rushed to the restaurant. This time, it was a mess. Usually, the competition between the merchants was fierce. They maintained a friendly relationship on the surface, but in the dark, they were constantly competing with each other. After being stirred up by someone, they finally tore apart their face. After arranging this kind of wicked thing, Zhong Xiaobao chose to ignore the big conflicts between the merchants in Sanshui County. He was worried about Wang Huan. He didn't know what Wang Huan's father was thinking. When he found out that many children would participate in this kind of survival game, he also signed up his daughter and son-in-law. After all, Li Zun said that 5 and 8 years old children could also participate. According to Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan's idea, Wang Huan's father would never sign up his 2 children from 8 to 12 years old. If they were 5 years old, it would be easy. When Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan were born, they were a little bigger than other children. Zhong Xiaobao was 8.5 kilograms, while Wang Huan was a little lighter at 8.5 kilograms. The 2 big fat children made the 2 families very happy at that time. It could be said that the 2 mothers were lucky and had good health, so there were no accidents. Usually, because she was the head of the household, Madame Zhong and Madame Wang had plenty of milk and was a little older than the other children. When the 2 of them came here, after more than a year of training in eating and drinking, they looked like 4-year-old children. There were 5 or 6-year-old children who were not even as big as the 2 of them. Father Wang was not a scholar like Father Zhong. He was a more down-to-earth person. He always compared his children with others, and every time he compared his children, he felt that his children were better. Therefore, he was tempted and went to between the clouds and the water to sign up his children. When he got home, he was still arguing with his wife. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan immediately found out about the 2 of them. After their names were signed up, Wang Huan's parents were not very peaceful at home. The 2 of them could only discuss whether they should go or not. They could go play on the grassland, but it was not interesting. What wilderness survival? The ranch was not dangerous, and they could eat the food prepared by adults at night. If this was called wilderness survival, then what were the 2 of them called? It's so worrying. My dad is really too much. Why did he have to sign up the 2 of us? We don't have the demeanor of a big family. Why do we have to compete with others? Wang Huan was most worried that her parents would fight. Your family is not a big family. Your dad's thinking is not wrong. I heard that your grandfather supports him. What kind of thinking is that? It's more like the thinking of a small farmer, right? It's a little selfish, a little utilitarian, a little arrogant, a little afraid of being looked down on by others, a little. Chapter 146. Before Zhong Xiaobao could continue to belittle her family, Wang Huan made up her mind. Don't criticize my family. I've made up my mind. I'll go. What's with the mindset of a farmer? This is called the spirit of drawing one's sword. Then let's go. Let Steward Zhong follow us. Let's see if we can buy some horses there. Mare's milk is also fine. We can buy it locally, make it into cheese, and ship it back to the children. We can also make dishes. In the early stage, we need to cultivate the habit of eating these things. Zhong Xiaobao didn't care if he went or not. He was just going to have fun there. He was fine with going out to take a look. He wasn't dissatisfied with Wang Huan's father. Everyone had different ideas. He couldn't arrange everyone around him according to his and Wang Huan's ideas. In the future, he had to get his mother to tell Wang Huan's mother some stories and indirectly teach Wang Huan's father not to always want to stand out. Even if almost everyone had this idea, it was best to suppress it as much as possible. The two families should communicate more frequently. When the time came, they could discuss together if they had any ideas. Well, then let's prepare. It will be over in a few days. I heard that this time, it will take a long time, 10 days for the big ones and 3 days for the small ones. Let's reminisce about the past at that time. Tell my family about this decision. My mother is worried about the two of us. My mother is better. I don't know what my father is thinking all day. Seeing that Zhong Xiaobao also supported her, Wang Huan understood that Zhong Xiaobao understood her. She couldn't change her father, let alone teach him. She could only try her best to influence him. Thinking of influence, she touched Zhong Xiaobao and asked, "Xiaobao, help me think of a good way to make my father more stable. It's a small matter now. If something big happens in the future, he will die. I've already thought about it. I'll follow the madam's strategy. Let my mother often tell your mother about the things that happened because of not being stable. There are many such stories. Just ask my father." Zhong Xiaobao said what he just thought. Wang Huan was not satisfied. How slow would that be? I want to be fast. I want to grow up quickly. Then we can only let him interact with some steady people. After watching them for a long time, he will naturally learn. Let your father go out and interact more with those kinds of people. Send Song Jinggong to follow by his side so that he won't suffer too much. It's not a big deal to suffer a small loss. It's better to suffer more. This time, Zhong Xiaobao came up with a method that he supported the most. It was also the most effective method. It was just like how if an adult wanted their child to walk more steadily, they could only make the child fall more often. There was nothing faster than this. You've worked hard, Xiaobao. You still have to worry about my family. Wang Huan cupped her chin in her hand and thanked him. No, this is not called hard work. This is called happiness. When you can do your best for a family, you should feel the things in the process. Whether it is sweet or painful, it is happiness. Zhong Xiaobao said with emotion. He had never felt sad about this kind of thing. Yes, happiness. It's really happiness. Xiaobao, you are so kind. Hurry up and prepare. If you don't have it, get someone to do it immediately. Since it's survival in the wild, then it has to look like a survival in the wild. Wang Huan pinched Zhong Xiaobao's face as a reward. She began to think about what to bring there. She and Zhong Xiaobao each had a sharp needle in their sleeves. In addition to this, they also needed a small shovel that could be used to dig the soil, a blanket, a hat to block the sun, some prepared medicine, a set of iron bowls, a small knife, rope, salt, a backpack, and flint for starting a fire. They had to find something that could produce sparks with a light touch. Otherwise, she and Zhong Xiaobao would not have enough strength. Wang Huan listed these things one by one to Zhong Xiaobao. As Zhong Xiaobao listened, he suddenly said, "Get someone to make some small shovels and bowls. They are the things that children play with. When the time comes, we will use them as sponsors. The quality must be good, and they can't hurt the children. Engrave the words between the clouds and the water on them. When the time comes, let someone set up a big business and use this name." Good idea. Children will have this idea since they were young, and that is that between the clouds and the water is the best place. Between the clouds and the water is also the best thing. We will let the things between the clouds and the water accompany them as they grow up. Then, should we also ask for sponsorship for the restaurant between the clouds and the water? Find a few cooks between the clouds and the water to cook for them. The ingredients will also be provided by the restaurant between the clouds and the water. We must get this done quickly. Otherwise, When those scholars compete in intelligence, other people will know the benefits of this sponsorship and snatch this business away. When Wang Huan heard Zhong Xiaobao's words, she also added, "This kind of management method from a child was the best." When she was young, there were many things that she still couldn't forget. For example, when it came to dolls, the first word that came to her mind was Barbie. With the decision made, the two began to get busy. The bag had to be specially made. It had to be carried on both shoulders, and there had to be an extra belt around the waist. The fabric had to be strong, and the clothes couldn't be so loose anymore. Wang Huan's family also sent someone to inform them, asking them to stop arguing. The child had already decided to go. Steward Zhong also personally went to Zhuangzi to look for Li Zun to discuss the sponsorship. All the needed things would be provided by Between the Clouds and the Water. After listening to Steward Zhong's words, Li Zun felt a little incredulous. Could it be that the three owners of Between the Clouds and the Water were sick? Otherwise, why would they be willing to pay? Since there was such a good thing, there was no way he would refuse. He was afraid that Between the Clouds and the Water would go back on their word, so he specially asked someone to write a written agreement. Both parties signed it. Now he was relieved. Steward Zhong was also relieved. It was written on the paper that the items used for the game could only be provided by Between the Clouds and the Water, and no one else was allowed to join in. After waiting for Steward Zhong to leave happily, Li Zun found the middle-aged man hiding behind the screen and said, "Master, are all the owners of Between the Clouds and the Water stupid? They are actually willing to pay so much money. Look at what he wrote. It's all included. Even the carriage to go there will be provided by Between the Clouds and the Water. This will be the third time. Thinking about it, there will be a lot of children coming here. Maybe it won't be enough without 300 or 500 taels of silver. Look, he wrote that they will take care of all the children's food, and guarantee that it will be good food. In addition, at the end of the day, every child will give out toys and prizes. I really don't understand." The middle-aged man listened to Li Zun's words while looking at the words on the paper. He was also puzzled. What was the purpose of giving out so many things? Could it be that it was just to curry favor with Li Zun? A few hundred taels of silver to curry favor? Was it possible? No, it can't be that simple. There must be something else that we haven't thought of. It's not a lot of money, but the little Luoshui River makes them a lot of money every day. That's right, the little Luoshui River. I heard that when they bought that place, no one wanted it at all. In the end, when they bought it, they immediately built a pier. There's also the restaurant and other places behind it, which made many people envious and jealous. Master, could it be that they are doing the same thing as the little Luoshui River? But they didn't ask for anything. No matter how I look at it, they are just giving money away. I think they must be stupid. Just look at how they treat the children on the Zhuangzi. They must like children very much. Li Zun suddenly had an idea and said. After saying that, he felt that this was the case, especially when there were two children on the two Zhuangzi. They liked children, so they were willing to give money to them. It's not as simple as you think. Let's wait and see. We will understand when the time comes. Zhangjia Zhuangzi is different everywhere. The middle-aged man didn't completely agree with Li Zun's words. Li Zun didn't refute and nodded. Okay, let's wait and see. I will go and ask how many people have signed up over there. The next day, Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan prepared everything. They were only waiting for Li Zun to gather all the people and then set off according to the scheduled time. There was news from the restaurant that more than 30 people had signed up in the past 2 days. All of them were sent by rich people. As for those who lived far away, they probably hadn't arrived yet. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang's families didn't sign up because it was too long and they were afraid that it would affect their studies. As for the children on the nearby Zhuangzi, only the two main families came to sign up. The other rural children didn't dare to come. Why didn't they come? Wang Huan was puzzled. It was such a good opportunity for the children to play. The parents could eat free food and stay in free tents. They didn't have to spend a single cent. It was a good thing. After the game, they could even get a gift. Of course they are scared. Who is Li Zun? The people who came that day saw how rich he was. They thought that with so many rich and powerful people together, if their children were to bump into someone, they couldn't afford to pay for it. How would they have time to send their children to such a distant place? They also don't have time to accompany their children. How much work would that waste? At this time, Zhong Xiaobao also understood that the children from poor families wouldn't come. Being poor didn't mean that the parents didn't care about their children. If the children came, the parents would naturally accompany them. That would waste a lot of time. Does that mean that our plan this time has failed? Wang Huan thought about it and agreed. It didn't fail. The purpose was to involve Li Zun. Whether there were children from poor families or not, he would find it interesting. Next time, we will find something else for him to do. Besides, children from poor families don't care much. They run around the village all day long. If we leave them on the mountain, they can find food by themselves. What's the point of training for survival in the wild? Zhong Xiaobao didn't have any thoughts of failure. It was fine as long as they achieved their goal. Well, then let's get in touch with those rich and powerful people. Let's see how they talk and do things. When the time comes, we can learn from them. I think Li Zun will take the children from Zhuangzi out. When Wang Huan mentioned Li Zun, she laughed. She could imagine what Li Zun would do. Some of the 5-year-olds are also unable to do so. What do you think? 5-year-olds can't. How is that possible? I saw that the children in the Zhuangzi children of the Zhong family and Wang family are all not bad. Could it be that the villagers eat different food? Li Zun was puzzled. Young Marquis, you're right. They eat different food. Usually, the villagers of the Zhuangzi children of the Zhong family and Wang family only have a little more money compared to us. Occasionally, they eat meat. But the adults are different. Those children are fed good food and drinks every day. I heard that they don't eat at home. In the school, all the children, no matter their age, are fed 2 meals a day. In the morning, they are fed milk and eggs, and in the afternoon, they are fed vegetables and meat. The children grow fast. As long as they eat good food, you can immediately see that our Zhuangzi children can't compare with them. Young Marquis, the children of the Zhong and Wang families, not to mention surviving in the wild, even if they are of the same age, they can beat up 3 of us in a fight. I also heard that as long as the 2 families have something good, they will think of the children. Even if a cow falls to its death, they will boil some soup for the children. The informant didn't dare to continue. After the young Marquis came here, he didn't give them any benefits. These people sold their land and saved up a lot of money, but they were reluctant to spend it. They just ate what they ate. Everyone was like this, so they couldn't see anything. But now, there was something different. These children could see the difference with just a glance. Now, many people in Zhuangzi were secretly regretting. It was said that on the day the young Marquis bought Zhuangzi, Zhangjia Zhuangzi sent people to buy it. Unfortunately, they were one step too late. Those who sold the land at that time were complaining to each other. They said that they shouldn't have sold the land in such a hurry. They should have waited for Zhangjia Zhuangzi's people to buy it. At this time, Li Zun was silent. He didn't know if he should complain about why the Zhong family and Wang family treated Zhuangzi so well, or regret that he didn't give the children good food when he came here. He didn't expect that the 2 Zhuangzi would give the children such good food. Just look at the children who were sent to compete that day. Every one of them had a red face. How about this? There are still a few days before we go to other places. You go and prepare food for those children. 4 meals a day. No, 4 meals a day. After that, let them play. As long as they are hungry, give them food at any time. Meat and eggs can't be left out. They will grow a little, right? It was too late for Li Zun to regret now. He had to hurry and ask with uncertainty. Yes, young Marquis. Don't worry. Children grow fast. They will grow a lot after sleeping. As long as they are fed, they will grow fat in a few days. I will go and arrange it. The messenger was happy to hear the young marquis's words. In this way, the villagers would not complain like before and he would be more relaxed. Just as he was about to leave, Li Zun opened his mouth again and said, "It's okay if they can't sleep well. Go and get more ice for me and put it in their room. Find someone to drive away mosquitoes for them. I don't believe that I can't compare with the Zhong family and Wang family." The messenger felt that his young marquis was crazy. Sending ice to the villagers and driving away mosquitoes? How much money did he spend? He wanted to persuade him but didn't dare. He could only agree. Suddenly, he thought of something and said again, "Young marquis, I heard that the 2 children of the Zhong family and Wang family have also signed up this time. A boy and a girl. Good, they are not bad. But I remember that the 2 children are less than 5 years old." Li Zun was happy at first, but then he doubted. Replying to the young marquis, "He's only 2 years old, but he's grown up quite a bit. He looks like he's 4 years old, but he's even more robust than some of the 5-year-old children in our manor. Maybe he eats better." The messenger was quite clear about this matter. Li Zun thought for a while and felt that he had seen the 2 children before. They were indeed older than others. He nodded and said, "I know. Remember to ask someone to take care of them. Don't let anything happen to them." The messenger nodded and left. Li Zun was a little annoyed. He didn't expect that no one would come for the things he had arranged. He couldn't think of a good idea for a while, so he left the room to find his teacher. "Teacher, what do you think we should do?" After Li Zun saw his teacher, he told him the whole story and asked for his teacher's help. The middle-aged man didn't have any ideas at the moment. After thinking for a while, he said, "It's easy. Since those who are not well off can't come, then you can find those who are well off. You can personally write an invitation and send it to each family. I think they won't dare to not give you face. As for which family has money and children, you can send someone to the Yamen to ask." Li Zun now had a backbone. He didn't care about his status and directly ran to the study to write the invitation. If it was in the past, he wouldn't have written an invitation. This time, it was simple. He just left a space for the name and directly wrote the content. When the time comes, he just had to add the name. Although it didn't seem very respectful, what was his status? While Li Zun was busy looking for people, the preparations at the restaurant between the clouds and the water were more or less done. The next day, the intellectual competition between the scholars would begin. This was relatively new to the scholars. Small flags were inserted into the ground. There were also 10 large flags that fluttered in the wind. Of course, regardless of whether it was the large flags or the small flags, they couldn't flutter. They had been fixed on the frames. These flags had the names of various shops written on them. The large flags could be seen from afar. What no one expected was that all of these banners were taken up by the shops of Sanshui County that sold brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones. This time, they were all holding their breaths, wanting to compete in the water cloud restaurant. At the same time, they also wanted to let the scholars use their things. Some of these scholars came from the little Nushui River. The people in the shops felt a sense of satisfaction as they took revenge. "Who asked you to say that our things weren't good? What happened now? Didn't you still have to use it? Who asked you to steal our business? What happened now?" All 10 large flags were taken by us. Each one took a month. Especially after hearing the gasps of the people who came here when they saw the flags, the people in the shops felt even more proud. Each and every one of them actually came here personally to watch the show and show their faces. The Shueyun Club had done a good job in this regard. People had long since spread the news that certain shops provided certain items, and before the intelligence competition even started, many people had already remembered the names of those shops. Some even directly expressed that they would go to those shops to buy things in the future. Chapter 148. This kind of effect made many people surprised. Some of them were seeing this kind of thing for the second time, while some were seeing it for the first time. The first time, because they were all children, not many people paid attention to it. Now that it was changed to adults, and with the addition of the flag, they remembered this kind of method even though they were surprised. Master, I finally know why that steward Zhong is willing to provide us with things. Look, it says that when the time comes, we need to let others know that it was between the clouds and the water who provided it. Just now, Li Cheng told me that 3 shops have found him and are willing to pay to buy things for this wilderness survival. One said that he can take care of everything, even the clothes, and the other one is willing to take out 2,000 taels of silver at once. Master, we will pay for it. Li Zun was sitting on the top of the 2nd floor of the restaurant. Nowadays, many rich people were willing to sit on the top of the restaurant to enjoy a different feeling. The top of the restaurant between the clouds and the water was more expensive than the private rooms on the 2nd floor because only one group of people could go up at a time, and the number could not exceed 20. As long as one went up, they would be able to enjoy the feeling of being alone. Li Zun also heard some of the words said by the people who were talking loudly. Coupled with Li Cheng's report just now, he understood why Steward Zhong left so happily. He put the contract in his hand on the table and said to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man now didn't know how to express the depression in his heart. He was the teacher of the little Marquis. Usually, no matter what, he would be able to help Li Zun think of a solution. He didn't expect that this time, he would miscalculate. In any case, he couldn't have guessed that the money was really given for free, but the benefits that they received were not small at all. Hearing Li Zun's words and looking at his expectant gaze, the middle-aged man helplessly sighed. There's no other way. They have another contract in their hands. If we really dare to go back on our word, we can only kill them all. Moreover, we can't let anyone find out. Do you think that will work? No. I've never thought of killing them. Even if someone wanted to kill them, they could kill the main family, but could they kill all the other villagers? The imperial uncle would definitely not leave the matter at that. With so many people killed at once, it was too frightening. He would definitely send out scouts in all directions. What's more, Zhangjia Zhuangzi was a place of auspicious signs. If the people there were all dead, could it be that it wasn't an auspicious sign? Wasn't it because Imperial Uncle had ruled the country well? Master, let's not talk about killing people anymore. Is there any other way? When Li Zun heard his master mention killing people, he was scared out of his wits. When Zhangjia Zhuangzi was alive, he could ignore him and did not need to give him any benefits. But if he really killed them, it would involve auspicious signs. Outside of the auspicious signs, how could anything happen? Could that still be called auspicious? There's no other way. Why don't you ask Steward Zhong and see if he has any ideas? I think they will still give you face. The middle-aged man was just saying. He did not dare to kill people. The one who tied the bell should untie it. Since Li Zun wanted to get more benefits, he could only go to him. Li Cheng was dealing with people who wanted to give him money for free. When he heard the young master's call, he immediately found an excuse and ran over. He was sweating, not because of the heat, but because he was pestered. Waiting for Li Zun to finish his words, Li Cheng knew that this time it was not him who was pestered, but someone else. He found Steward Zhong, who was in charge of arranging things in the restaurant, and said to him, "Steward Zhong, can I have a word with you?" Steward Zhong naturally did not dare to refuse. He followed him to a place where there was no one else and asked, "What's the matter, young Master Li?" It's a long story. Li Cheng hesitated. Then let's make it short. I still have a lot of things to do here. Steward Zhong did not have time to chat with him. There were still some arrangements to be made and they would be used tomorrow. The young lady had sent some things called fireworks. She said that if someone answered correctly, they would light one. If they answered incorrectly, a bowl of water would be poured down on their head to calm them down. These things sounded simple, but if something went wrong, he did not dare to face the young master and the young lady. This was the first time he had heard of this method. In order not to make others angry, he specially asked some scholars. In the end, the scholars were straightforward and said that a bowl of water was just right in the hot weather. Only then did he feel relieved. Now that he saw Li Cheng wanting to compete with him in terms of patience, he did not have the patience. Li Cheng did not expect Steward Zhong's words to be so harsh. He was stunned for a moment and had to tell him what the young master had told him. Steward Zhong, you see, now your restaurant has accepted other people's things and made flags for them. It's not bad. My young master wants to ask, can you let more people participate in the survival in the wild? They are all people of the Tang Empire. Oh, so that's how it is. Well said, well said. Steward Zhong had already stopped lamenting about the young master and young madam. He was numb. Today, when he came out, the young master found him and said that if Li Meng wanted to go back on his word, then he should use another method. He should get all the benefits he deserved. After saying this, the young master also gave him a few words. These words were a little confusing at the time, but now that he thought about it carefully, it was really the words of the prophet. He could even predict this. Fortunately, he was used to it. As long as the young master and the young lady said something, it was right. As long as they did something, it was a sure win. What he had to do was to listen to them and follow. So Steward Zhong agreed. Then, the things written by the young master can be. Hearing Steward Zhong's words, Li Cheng relaxed a lot. It seemed that this Steward Zhong was easy to talk to. Now he wanted to get back the written agreement. Steward Zhong smiled. He felt that he had grasped everything at this moment, even if this feeling was given by the young master. He said to Li Cheng, "Young master, don't be anxious. Let me finish. I think the young master of your restaurant wants to find other people to join. Young master Li may not know this, but this kind of thing is very troublesome and exhausting. But young master Li need not worry. We have a way to deal with this kind of thing. Why don't young master Li go back and ask between the clouds and the water to take care of this kind of thing? At that time, young master Li just needs to wait to receive the things and the money. What do you think?" Li Cheng was confused. What did Steward Zhong mean? Help me. If it was someone else, he would believe it. But if it was the steward of Zhongjia Zhuangzi, he would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. He had never taken advantage of the steward of Zhongjia Zhuangzi. Not to mention other things, the gold was rewarded by the young master from the palace. He changed it later, thinking that he could get some benefits, such as paying less money and so on. However, when he arrived at the restaurant, he found that the waiter caught the people eating and said that the young master of Zhuangzi was benevolent and righteous. In order to help the poor, he even paid for it himself. Between the clouds and the water was not as good as young master Li. After taking the money, he just arranged a courtyard for the family to live in for free and provided half a pig's knuckle a day for the mother. These were not comparable to young master Li's benevolence at all. Li Cheng remembered that he was dumbfounded at that time. How could he dare to pay less money when the young master spread the news? That would be unfair to the young master. Not only did he not get the money, but he also continued to give more and even rewarded the waiter more money. In such a place, such a person wanted to take advantage of the young master. In his dreams. A few days ago, Steward Zhong went there and said that he would be in charge of the survival training. He hesitated and thought that Steward Zhong was a good person. But today, he found that the things that Steward Zhong gave were much less than what others would give. Thinking of the past, when he heard that Steward Zhong was so easy to talk to, he felt a chill rising from the bottom of his feet. The sun was so bright that he could not feel the heat. Young Master Li, say something. Do you agree to help between the clouds and the water? Steward Zhong waited for a while and saw that Li Cheng was in a daze, so he had to ask again. About this, Steward Zhong, I can't make the decision. How about I ask young master first and then come to you? About the written agreement. Li Cheng did not dare to agree. Who knew what would happen? He had to go back and discuss it. Then he reached out for the written agreement. Oh, young Master Li, look at my memory. That thing is at home. It's on the table in Master's study. How about you go back and discuss it first? I'll go and get it now. Steward Zhong was not a fool. Before the matter was settled, he would not hand over the written agreement. If Steward Zhong took back the written agreement and turned against him, what could he do to him? Well, thank you, Steward Zhong. I'll go and ask now. Li Cheng had no choice. He turned around and ran to the roof, repeating what he had just said to Steward Zhong. Master, what do you think? Li Zun was also a little afraid of this place. The people here did not follow common sense. There was no way to guess what they were going to do. He really wanted to use his identity to pressure them, but he did not dare. You want to pressure them? That censor is not playing with you. He really dares to impeach you. This. The middle-aged man did not feel good in his heart. He also could not figure out what between the clouds and the water wanted to do. The other side responded too quickly. He had just decided to go back and ask someone to go, and the other side agreed and put forward new conditions. No matter how he looked at it, these conditions would not do any harm to him. But was it possible? Between the clouds and the water seemed to have never suffered a loss. Zhang Jiazhuangzi was amazing. After thinking for a while, the middle-aged man only thought of one thing. He said to Li Cheng, "Go back and tell Steward Zhong that as long as those merchants promise to give us the same things and money, let him do it. If he wants the written agreement, ask him to come here." Chapter 149. The middle-aged man didn't know what to do now. The only thing he could think of was that Steward Zhong wanted to take some of the money from others. As for the result, he couldn't figure it out. Fortunately, the people here were tactful. They didn't directly refuse him when he wanted to change his mind. They just put forward a proposal that didn't seem to do any harm to him. He felt that what he did was really a bit inferior. What was the difference between this and a rascal? Even if he succeeded in this matter, it would only show his own incompetence. Anyone like the young Marquis could do the same, so why would he need to use him? Waiting for Li Cheng to leave, the middle-aged man felt that he was about to become an old man. When faced with something that he clearly knew, he couldn't figure out what was going on, let alone how to deal with it. Li Cheng left quickly and came back quickly. As soon as he saw Steward Zhong, he said with a smile, "Steward Zhong, my child agrees. When will you go upstairs and write the new receipt?" "The one from last time." "Oh, okay, I'll go up now." "Child Li, don't worry. I've got it. Look, is this it?" When Steward Zhong heard that Li Cheng agreed, he finally let out a sigh of relief. He took out the receipt from his sleeve and waved it in front of Li Cheng for him to see. Li Cheng was not angry at all, even if he knew that he couldn't fly back in such a short time from the restaurant to the Zhong family's courtyard. He reached out his hand and followed Steward Zhong upstairs. Steward Zhong greeted him first, took out the receipt and handed it back to Li Zun. Then he began to write a new receipt. When the receipt was in Li Zun's hand, Steward Zhong didn't worry that Li Zun would directly tear it up and refuse to admit it. Sometimes, the royal family also needed face to support them. The new receipt was finished in a short time. After both parties signed, Steward Zhong began to look for those who wanted to discuss with Li Zun about the sponsorship. Confused, Li Zun arranged for Li Cheng to follow behind to see what Steward Zhong wanted to do. Steward Zhong didn't hide from him. He walked around the restaurant and found 14 merchants who wanted to sponsor the wilderness survival game. He invited them to a box on the second floor. Li Cheng followed him in shamelessly. "Everyone, everyone." Steward Zhong shouted twice, causing the 14 shop owners to look at him. Only then did he continue to speak. "Thank you, everyone, for your assistance in surviving in the wild. Unfortunately, there are too many of you. Therefore, young Master Li has already instructed the Department of Between the Clouds and the Water to take care of this matter. Everyone, take a look. This is the written agreement that has just been signed." While speaking, Steward Zhong took out the written agreement in his hand and showed it to the 14 people. After reading it, they all nodded and admitted this fact. "Steward Zhong, since you are in charge of this matter, who do you want to join in?" A very thin man with high cheekbones spoke first at this time. The others also nodded. It was better to know the result than to be left hanging. They had seen how much benefits Between the Clouds and the Water's publicity could bring to others. They all wanted to do the same for the wilderness survival game. They knew that the people who could come out this time were either rich or noble. "Manager Yu, don't worry. I will tell you now. Manager Yu's shop is the #1 butcher shop in this county. Almost all the towns have Manager Yu's shop. Everyone, write down what you want on a piece of paper. It will be easier to explain when the time comes. Steward Zhong smiled at the person who spoke and comforted him. He then suggested to the crowd. He really doubted whether the meat in Manager Yu's shop could be eaten. Looking at Manager Yu's appearance, he knew. He was so thin that he looked like a monkey. Could it be that the meat he sold was inedible? The crowd didn't know that Steward Zhong was criticizing Manager Yu in his heart. When they heard this suggestion, they all felt that it was better. Everyone wrote down what they wanted. That way, it would be fair to choose whichever one they wanted. Just as they picked up the pen and were about to write, Steward Zhong spoke again. Everyone, you have to think carefully when you write. For example, shopkeeper Yu's family sells meat, so naturally, they can get meat for those children to eat. Shopkeeper Shong's family specializes in cloth, so he has clothes for those children. Therefore, when you write, don't write down the areas where you can't compare. After his reminder, the crowd suddenly realized what they should take out to get the approval of others. When they were waiting to write, they carefully covered their hands with their arms so that others couldn't see. It didn't take long for the 14 people to finish writing. They carefully dried the ink, folded it, and handed it to Steward Zhong. Steward Zhong took the paper and directly handed it to Li Cheng without looking at it. He asked him to send it to the top and let the people above see if it was enough. Li Cheng didn't expect that Steward Zhong wouldn't even look at it. He was shocked and didn't dare to delay. He turned around and left. Everyone, maybe you still don't know why I did this. Let me tell you now. When two tigers fight, one will be hurt. I can't bear to see one of them get squeezed out. Therefore, I worked a little harder and helped you accept the sponsorship. There are a total of 14 companies, and 6 of them are doing the same thing as the others. For example, shopkeeper Shong's shop is the same as shopkeeper Zhu's. They both run a cloth shop. The two of you must have thought that if you used one shop, you wouldn't use the other. Wrong. What I want to say is that you're wrong. I've used both of your shops. As the two of you know, there are a total of 3 tasks, so the two of you can make clothes for the first 2 tasks. The clothes that are suitable for grass and sand are definitely different. The two of you can make one for each project. As for who will be the grass and who will be the sand, the two of you can discuss it yourselves. When it comes to the 3rd project, we will ask the children who have worn the clothes and praise which company has more clothes. Then, that company can continue to do the business. As for the other company, I'm sorry, you didn't seize the opportunity this time. When Steward Zhong said these words, the two people were already looking at each other. It seemed that they wanted to compete with their eyes to see who was better. Steward Zhong didn't care about this. He didn't care about how the others fought. As long as the clothes were good, it was fine. The remaining 4 companies also had conflicts and were also dealt with by him in the same way. After the matter of the 6 people was settled, Steward Zhong said to the crowd, "Everyone, we want all of your things. Remember what you wrote, including the money. When the time comes, we will explain to those people who provided the things when we use them. Also, between the clouds and the water will be responsible for making some flags for you. When the time comes, the flags will be fluttering in the wind. Others will understand at a glance. If any of you feel that you have spent too much, you can withdraw now. We will not do anything to stop you. Is that okay?" After Steward Zhong said this, the 14 people's faces didn't look good. They had originally planned to take all of the goods at once, so they took out more money. They didn't expect Steward Zhong to divide the goods like this. Some of them wanted to withdraw, but they felt reluctant. They hoped that others would withdraw so that they could get more benefits. Unfortunately, none of them proposed to withdraw. After all, the children this time were from different families. They might take care of their business in the future, so they didn't dare to withdraw. For example, if shopkeeper Yu wanted to withdraw, he would be in trouble in the future. Many people saw him when he came, including Steward Zhong, the people from the 13 shops, and the person upstairs. If he withdrew, People would naturally not buy from his shop when they came to buy meat. All kinds of rumors and slanders would spread. If people didn't buy from his shop when he was there, it meant that the meat he sold wasn't good. Shopkeeper Yu felt that Steward Zhong would definitely do that. He would even announce that he had withdrawn. Almost at the same time, the 14 people let out a sigh and accepted their fate. They had all given in. Steward Zhong wasn't done yet. He continued, "Everyone, between the clouds and the water has helped you so much. Originally, I shouldn't take any benefits, but between the clouds and the water isn't mine. There are still many people waiting to eat. Therefore, 10% of the value of the goods that you have written will have to be paid to between the clouds and the water again. If anyone doesn't agree, you can go to the person upstairs. If he agrees, you won't have to pay 10% of the goods or money. You don't have to think that it's too expensive. This is a good deal. In the future, between the clouds and the water will provide you with more opportunities like this. At that time, we will talk to each shop. There will be sponsorship matters, and there will also be other places that need to buy things urgently. If you have any problems that you can't solve, you can also go to between the clouds and the water. Between the clouds and the water will help you think of a solution. Today is the first time, so we will take 10% of the goods. In the future, we can talk about this. For example, if you want 10,000 bolts of cloth, between the clouds and the water won't dare to take 1,000 bolts of cloth. It could be 100 bolts, or even 50 bolts of cloth. After Steward Zhong finished, he didn't say anything more. He looked at the 14 people sitting there, waiting for someone to withdraw. The 14 people were angry and happy at the same time. No one was willing to take out more money, but at the same time, they were happy that they could find more business in the future. Steward Zhong, I agree. I will write a receipt for you. Shopkeeper Yu was the first to speak. When he came here, he made some inquiries and knew that Zhong family and Wang family raised a lot of pigs. This could be a good supply for him. When the others saw that someone had taken the lead, they all agreed. The 14 people started to write again. Steward Zhong's smile didn't change. This time, he earned a lot more than what he should have paid in the beginning. Although they were advertising for them, under those advertisements or when they were introduced, there would be a sentence that was between the clouds and the water. When the 14 people finished writing and handed the receipt to Steward Zhong, Li Cheng, who came downstairs and heard something, stood at the door. He was completely dumbfounded. He thought in his heart, I see. This place is not for ordinary people. Chapter 150. The grass was green and the sky was overcast. The sound of the zither and flute urged them on. The quiz game that had been prepared for a few days finally began. The restaurant felt a little regretful when they saved the money for the ice. Today was so dark that it was frightening. They were afraid that the sudden rain would wet the flags outside, and they were also afraid that the people who came to watch would leave in a hurry. The strong wind blew the sand everywhere. The flags outside could not withstand this kind of attack and broke one by one. Seeing this situation, Steward Zhong was frightened. He was afraid that the merchants who spent money would not be satisfied, so he hurriedly found Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan, who were drinking soup in the corner of the first floor. Young master, we are in trouble. Many of the flags outside have been damaged by the wind. The advertisements on them will be ruined. Steward Zhong said nervously to Zhong Xiaobao. He saw that the soup that the young master and young lady were drinking was a worm-shaped thing. He felt a little cold and wanted to vomit. He did not know what it was. It was just sent here from Xiao Hong in the middle of the night. They had been nourished with water and were still alive when they arrived here. The young master and young lady made this into soup today. It seemed to taste good. Ah! Broken. That's right. I said that if the paper is not coated with a layer of glue, it will be damaged when the wind blows. It is useless to punch holes. How is it? I am right, right? Just in time. Steward Zhong is here. Drink some soup. It is delicious. As Wang Huan spoke, she specially scooped some soup from the big bowl for Steward Zhong. There were still some insect fragments in the bowl. Steward Zhong was about to cry. Was this thing for humans to eat? In the morning, he had seen it. It was a bunch of red worms moving around in the basin. But the little girl had scooped it for you. How dare you not eat it? The two ancestors were eating it. Could it be that you were more precious than them? Steward Zhong gritted his teeth and drank the soup in 2 mouthfuls. Not to mention that the little ancestor also drank the soup, he had to swallow it even if it was poison. How is it? Wasn't it delicious? Normally, I wouldn't let people drink it even if they wanted to. This thing is better than the fungus. No, it's not the same thing. It's more expensive than the fungus. Isn't it very fresh? Eat more of this. It's good for that thing. Xiao Bao, tell Steward Zhong what's good for it. Watching Steward Zhong drink the entire bowl of soup, Wang Huan continued to speak. Later on, she realized that some words shouldn't come out of her mouth, so she called out to Zhong Xiaobao, who was drinking soup with his head lowered. Zhong Xiaobao was having a good time drinking, so he didn't want to be disturbed by Wang Huan. He looked up at Steward Zhong and said, "It's fine that the flag is broken. That's even better. Immediately get someone to paste it with new paper. Paste it every time it's broken. This is to let those who have spent money know how important this matter is. It's just a small matter. You ate the pink stuff in the bowl. It's a waste. If you don't want to eat it, give it to me. I'll eat it. Even if I give you the ginseng fruit, you'll just eat it. Give it to me." Zhong Xiaobao didn't care about the broken flag at all. He had already prepared for it. The more it was broken, the faster it would be, and the more it would be replaced. The businessmen here didn't care about the quality of the goods. What they cared most was whether others cared about them. If one side was broken and the other side was mashed, it would make people have a good impression of them. The only thing that dissatisfied him was that Steward Zhong drank the soup, leaving some spoonworms under the bowl. For him, there was no difference between a steamed bun that cost 10,000 yuan and a steamed bun that cost 50 cents. He could eat it if he wanted. However, even if it was a steamed bun that cost 10 cents, it would be thrown away after 2 bites. That was what he couldn't tolerate the most. It was a waste. How many people couldn't eat? Which one of the people who did business with him didn't eat all the food? Who dared to leave food in front of him? Gulp, gulp. Steward Zhong poured some more soup into the bowl without any hesitation. He didn't want to be beaten like that manservant in the inner courtyard. During the tomb sweeping festival, the master gave out things to the subordinates and held a meal. He clearly remembered that it was a way of eating that he had never seen before. The food was put in a big basin and placed there. Whoever wanted to eat could take it with the bowl and chopsticks in front of them. At that time, Pomegranate said 3 times that they should take as much as they could eat. They were not afraid to eat too much, as long as they didn't leave anything behind. In the end, one of them was greedy and ate so much. In the end, he made a bowl of fatty meat with chopped green onions and ginger, but in the end, only half of it was left. This was troublesome. The young master and young lady also ate together. When they saw that someone left something behind, they immediately called for the guards and gave them 40 whips without hesitation. From then on, everyone knew that the young master was a little different from others. He absolutely didn't allow food to be left behind. The young master didn't feel bad if you ate 50 grams of stir-fried meat with wood ears, but if you dared to leave a few pieces of blanched spinach behind, you would be in trouble and would be given at least 10 whips. Wang Huan watched Steward Zhong drink the soup while enduring the nausea and helplessly shook her head. She couldn't do anything. She knew what Zhong Xiaobao had experienced in the past. He had an almost devout attitude towards food. For many people, every grain was hard work. What did the farmer's hard work have to do with me? I bought it with money. I paid for it with my own labor. It wasn't given to me for free. Why should I care whether you've worked hard or not? But for Zhong Xiaobao, it was a different situation. He always wanted to leave more food for himself. No matter what he ate, he would always look happy. This was not the first time. She wanted to tell him that fish bones couldn't be eaten at this age. If there was a danger, there would be no hospital to save him. She had never seen Zhong Xiaobao leave any food behind. When his family left, Zhong Xiaobao frowned. He couldn't understand this kind of thing that was almost like a disease. Perhaps he also wanted to live like him for a period of time before he could understand. Don't you feel hungry anymore? This is really good food. It's more expensive than wood ears. Zhong Xiaobao watched the housekeeper eat all the food and asked with a smile. Delicious, delicious, really delicious. Young master, how can you make such delicious food? Oh, I'll ask someone to paste the flags. Steward Zhong didn't know the taste of the food he drank, so he could only echo. Seeing Steward Zhong leave in a hurry, Zhong Xiaobao picked up a piece of spoon intestine and put it into his mouth. He doesn't know how to use his body. Eating spoon intestine soup made him so scared. Last time, I saw him eat pig kidney. How can pig kidney compare to spoon intestine? Idiot. Why do you have those two defects? One is for food, and the other is for the poor and weak. I'm not a god, I'm a human, and humans have flaws. You're not the first person to discover my flaws. There were quite a few in the past. Do you want to make use of them? You can try. Zhong Xiaobao was still as calm as ever, not at all afraid. I don't want to try. A person who knows his shortcomings still keeps them. I think this is a line between heaven and hell. Wang Huan wasn't an idiot. She understood after thinking a little. Sometimes, when you see someone's weakness, you can't attack it. Maybe it's a trap. All right, I've finished the food. The rest is yours. Can you still eat it? If you can't, give it to me. I'll eat. Zhong Xiaobao wasn't willing to waste time on such meaningless things. I'm not full yet. Xiaobao, I want to see how those scholars play the game of intelligence. Wang Huan didn't eat as fast as Zhong Xiaobao. She controlled her speed and scooped some dry food into her bowl. While eating, she discussed with Zhong Xiaobao. If you want to go, then go. It's not a big deal. I'll continue to eat here. Zhong Xiaobao was stunned. This was the first time Wang Huan spoke to him in such a tone. He wasn't used to it. Then I'll really go. But what should I say after I go? I'm such a young child. Give me some ideas. Wang Huan said awkwardly. Of course, Zhong Xiaobao didn't know what she was thinking. He hadn't come into contact with women's psychology, so he didn't know that most of the time, women were the first to bear responsibility and responsibility. Wang Huan didn't have the ability to earn money. She had already received news from County Magistrate Cheng that the Wang family would also have some special treatment. These things were prepared by Zhong Xiaobao. Some of the benefits were also taken out from Zhong Xiaobao's warehouse. She wanted to take some responsibility for these things. She was a strong woman, but she was used to a family where her father had the final say. As the deputy head of the city's organization department, her mother also had to listen to her father at home. To her, her father wasn't just a family member, but also an idol. Zhong Xiaobao had some of her father's temperament, and was even a little stronger. She unconsciously recognized this identity. Zhong Xiaobao didn't know that this kind of mentality was imperceptible. He looked at Wang Huan a little worriedly, wanting to know if her mood suddenly became unstable. What are you looking at? I'm asking you to think of ideas. Wang Huan changed in an instant. This kind of mentality couldn't be explained with theory. Zhong Xiaobao experienced this kind of change in Wang Huan's personality in such a short time. He was also dumbfounded. He muttered, "How about this, after you go up, when they are confused, you can tell them that I'll just watch, I won't say anything. Now tell me, are you stupid or am I stupid?" Wang Huan heard Zhong Xiaobao's words and really didn't know what to say. Then forget it, don't go up. Wait for the result. Zhong Xiaobao's mind wasn't on this at all. Seeing that Wang Huan didn't insist on going up, he didn't continue to talk about this. He changed the topic and said, "Go and ask how many people are participating in the wilderness survival training. That's what we really need to participate in. Okay, Brother Jiaozi, I want to ask you something. Wang Huan also gave up the idea of going upstairs. If she really went upstairs, it would be difficult for her to explain. Hearing Zhong Xiaobao's words, she waved her hand. Gez was so flattered that he ran over to this side. Brother Jiaozi, how many people have signed up now? I remember that it will end tonight. Replying to Little Young Master and Little Miss, a total of 133 people have signed up so far. A total of 77 people are between the ages of 8 and 12, and the rest are between the ages of 5 and 8, a total of 58 people. Jiaozi respectfully replied. In that case, tell young Master Li to leave early, don't wait. Wang Huan ordered. Chapter 151. Li Zun didn't want to wait any longer. There were a total of 133 people. The older ones were 77 people, while the younger ones were 58 people. In fact, there were 56 people. Including Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan, who weren't old enough, the total number of people was 135. The intelligence game in Shueyun restaurant was still going on. According to the schedule, it would take at least half a month before it would end. Not only did the restaurant earn that bit of money from advertising, they also earned more money from the food and wine than before. The people in the 14 shops prepared everything that needed to be prepared. More than 100 children were not ordinary people. If they liked something, their business would be much better in the future. The people of the carriage shop drove the beautiful carriages to Tuqiao village. Early the next morning, the children arrived at the place accompanied by their families. They were all dressed up beautifully. No one knew whether they were preparing to go on an outing or to stay on the grassland for a few days. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan were close to each other. After tidying up, he carried a bag and was brought out by his family. Wang Huan's father originally wanted to follow, but after being persuaded by Wang Huan, he finally stayed. The 4 people who followed them were 2 Zhuangzi. 2 men and 2 women. The women were responsible for serving, and the men were naturally to protect. Li Zun also brought a lot of people out. Since he was organizing an activity, he naturally had to take care of others. When everyone got on the carriages, the team went in the direction of Luochuan County. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan sat in the middle and began to sleep. They were preparing to rest and play there. The other children were excited. Sometimes, they would stop the carriages, jump off and go into other people's carriages to talk. Sometimes, they would run a few steps with the team. They seemed to have unlimited energy. The adults didn't care, as long as the children were not in danger. This time, they all thought that they could bring their children to play, especially with the imperial nephew. This kind of thing was not easy to encounter. Seeing their own children running around, they thought it was a good thing. At least it showed that their children were capable and had endless energy. When they arrived at the ranch, they would definitely be better than other children. In the end, a journey that took more than a day took them 2 days to arrive. They even rested a few times on the way. After all, children were still young. When they were tired from playing, they didn't need to sleep. They wanted to eat good food. The carriages stopped, and the children came out of their respective carriages. They looked at the seemingly endless grassland in front of them and felt curious. Then, they looked at the children next to them, and a desire to compete arose in their hearts. When Father Zhong told Li Zun about this, he didn't mention any details. Li Zun found someone to figure out a way, which was to tell the children which direction to walk in. How much distance to walk each day would depend on each child's ability. In order to allow the children to identify the direction, there were flags planted every few dozen feet on the grassland. There were also people guarding the places not too far away. As long as a child ran to the wrong place, these people would go and correct it. In order to train the children, Li Zun thought of a way, which was to not allow the children to bring their own food. All the food on the children's bodies had to be taken away. They could only eat a meal when they woke up in the morning. There was no food for lunch, and at night, someone would set up a tent to cook for them. This time, he was determined to make these children suffer a little. He did the same for himself. The snacks in Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan's bags were taken away. The two of them didn't plan to eat at first, but they brought them with them just in case. The group of children rested for the night. Early the next morning, they all excitedly got up, dressed, and started to move forward with the group. As soon as they set off, the children, except for Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan, all ran forward like wild horses. Even Li Zun was no exception. Let's go, we don't have to hope to catch any game. They've cleaned up this place. Let's eat some grass for lunch. Wang Huan saw Zhong Xiaobao looking around and thought he wanted to catch something for lunch. She persuaded him and walked forward first. Zhong Xiaobao looked around again, then looked up at the blue sky. He took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Following behind Wang Huan, he said at the same time, I don't expect to catch anything. I just want to see what kind of grass is growing. When the time comes, I'll dig something out from under the grass to eat. Did you find anything? Wang Huan saw several kinds of wild vegetables. On this side of the pasture, the grass was not low. Even if it was specially cleaned, some of it was still more than half a meter tall. She and Zhong Xiaobao walked in the grass that was waist deep. Fortunately, some of the grass had been specially cut to feed the horses, so there was still a path. There are a few kinds of insects that usually have pupae under them. We'll dig some up and pickle them with salt. When the time comes, we can eat them to kill the living parasites. Zhong Xiaobao touched the grass beside him with his foot and said. Wang Huan nodded. She also knew that these things could be eaten after they were dug up. Some of them had parasites on them, which had a very small probability of causing people to get sick. They could be killed with salt. Even if eating them directly was not dangerous, it was still better to avoid it. The two of them walked at the very back. Naturally, there were adults following behind them. Some were specially sent by Li Zun to protect them, and some were parents who wanted to see how brave their children were. At this time, when they saw the two children walking at the very back, they felt that they were much worse than their own children who ran at the front. They shook their heads, thinking that the two children would not hold on for long and would leave here crying. Li Cheng, those two children are from the Zhuangzi school of Zhong family and Wang family, right? They walk a little slower, far worse than the children they sent to Zhuangzi. They don't have the drive of other children. Li Zun's teacher, who was the middle-aged man, also followed behind. After seeing Wang Huan and Zhong Xiaobao, he said to Li Cheng beside him, what the adults said is right. After all, they are only 2 years old. They are a little worse than others. I have already asked people to be fully prepared. There will not be any danger. Li Cheng also thought so, and echoed on the side. The other adults were walking there and talking, one by one. They were so excited like children. They specifically compared Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan to their own children. Big brother Xin, you see, even these two children have come here. They are simply fooling around. Looking at them, I don't know how many days it would take for them to reach their destination. I saw that brat of yours just now, he ran so fast. Good, he really has the demeanor of Big brother Xin in the past. An adult looked at Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan and said to another person beside him. That person's face showed a smile and also said, Brother Lei, what are you talking about? That kid of yours is also not ordinary. It seems that he was the second to run out. Look, now we can't even see his shadow. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan naturally did not know that the two of them had become negative teaching materials in the mouth of others. They had become the targets of criticism. The two of them walked for a while, then stopped and used a small shovel to dig a few times. Some were tender wild vegetables, some were small pupae in the soil, and some were even dug out a few earthworms. From the bag, they took out a small box made of iron and put these things in it. They sprinkled some salt on it and continued to move forward and continue to dig. Starting from 7 in the morning, 2 hours quietly passed in the process of children running and jumping. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan also prepared enough food for lunch and dinner. They organized their backpacks and began to speed up. The two of them walked back and forth with their heads down alternately. The person walking in front was responsible for looking at the road, while the person following behind was relaxed and only followed the person in front of them at the same pace. This way, they could reduce the consumption of energy and physical strength. The same pace, allowed them to reduce the resistance of the grass in the process. Big Brother Shin, you see, the two little guys are anxious. Unfortunately, at this time, if they want to rush, they will be tired. The children in front have already run far away. When the person surnamed Lei saw Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan speed up, he began to speak to the person next to him. The person surnamed Shin also nodded and agreed, "Isn't that so? It's too late. We can't see the children's shadows now. They will not be able to continue walking after a while." Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan heard the words of others this time. After all, these people were closely behind the two of them. At the same time, the two of them sighed in their hearts. They did not know anything, yet they dared to criticize. Who did not know that running faster would increase the distance between them? But there was nothing to eat at noon, only the water they each brought. When the afternoon came, they would see who would be the one to pull the other apart. The two of them did not say a word. They adjusted the frequency of their breathing, adjusted their walking posture, and chased forward little by little. Another 2 hours passed, and the sun in the sky seemed to be a little brighter. The children running in front of them finally ran out of strength. Each and every one of them was hungry, and they kept drinking water. Every few flags in front of them, there would be some water for them to drink. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan rushed all the way and finally saw the figures of the children in front of them. They rushed forward again. Some of the 5 to 8 years old children in front of them had stopped running and were lying there to rest. Some continued to persist, wanting to pull the others further away. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan came to a place where water was provided and stopped. They took out 2 iron bowls from their bags, one big and one small. The big one had a diameter of 20 centimeters, and the small one was about 10 centimeters. After the 2 bowls were placed properly, they took out a paper bag from their backpack. After opening it, they poured the small white pieces and powder inside into the big bowl. Then, they put the small bowl into the big bowl. After adding some water, they put the collected wild vegetables and insects into the small bowl. Then, they took the water that was prepared and poured it into the powder in the big bowl. The powder immediately began to bubble and release a large amount of heat. The two of them looked at the small bowl and poured some of the powder into the big bowl from time to time. After pouring the third bag, the water in the small bowl finally began to boil, and the things inside became soup. Chapter 152. Let's eat. In the end, Xiaobao sprinkled some ginger foam on top of the soup and the two of them started eating. It didn't take long for the soup to reach their stomachs. The adults who were following behind them and commenting on them couldn't say a word at this time. They were shocked by Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan's behavior. It turned out that they were digging for lunch. These two little guys were really too scary. Survival in the wild. Look at them, this is what it means to survive in the wild. When other children were hungry, they were eating so happily. Which family's children were these? That was incredible. Brother Lei, it seems that our children have to go hungry. I don't know if they still have the strength to run in the afternoon. The person surnamed Shin didn't dare to look down on Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan anymore. They actually knew how to find something to eat. The distance in front of them wasn't far. Not only could they catch up with them in the afternoon, but it would also be easy to overtake them. Yes, who asked them to only care about playing? Sigh tilde. Big Brother Shin, just now did you see clearly what the two of them took out? I'll get someone to make it today and give it to the children tomorrow. At this time, the person surnamed Lei felt his face burning. Just now, he kept saying bad things about the children. This was not good, and that was not good. Now, he looked at them. They were the ones who had the ability. Or rather, the adults were not ordinary. They could actually teach the children these things. Even if they didn't have the tools, They wouldn't starve to death by eating raw food. If he really left his children and these two children in a deserted place, not to mention whether there would be wolves and snakes, even if they were hungry, they would starve to death. But other people's children didn't have to worry. The person surnamed Shin nodded and then shook his head. Look carefully. These are some small tools. There is lime in them, but we can't give them to the children. Do they know what is edible? What is not edible? What if they are poisoned? Forget it, let's give them a good meal tonight. While they were talking, Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan had already continued on their way. They washed their food utensils with water and put them into their backpacks. Once again, they walked towards their destination with their heads down. This set of actions could be said to be done calmly, steadily, and patiently. There was no expression of excitement on his face, as if everything should be like this, as if he had already done it countless times. The hearts of the adults who were looking at them were surging with monstrous waves. The two children were really too steady, making people feel that the two of them were very confident. They would not shrink back, nor would they cry. Then, they looked at the children who were still lying on the ground and crying out that they were hungry. Almost all of them sighed. They couldn't compare. My lord, what do you think about this? Li Cheng also saw and smelled the fragrance of the soup. He also hadn't eaten. Just now, he couldn't wait to grab a few mouthfuls. It was just that he was a little disgusted. Those were all kinds of insects. He didn't know how the two children could eat so happily. The middle-aged man's eyes were fixed on Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan. He also didn't know who taught these two children. Previously, he said that they couldn't compare with the children in Zhuangzi. He didn't expect that this was wrong. Tenacity and perseverance were the best evaluation of these two children. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Zhuangzi, where did they find the person to teach the children of the villagers and their own children? Good ability. My lord, you. Li Cheng saw that the adult beside him was staring at the two children, so he had to ask again. Well, I know. Write this down. You saw the things they used just now, right? Go back and make a set. Be sure to keep an eye on them and see what other skills they have. The middle-aged man sighed and said. Li Cheng nodded and asked again, My lord, I'm talking about these children. What should we do? Don't we give them food? Do you think they can still hold on? No, they won't starve to death. Since they are here, they should be prepared to suffer. They just saw that they can make food. Why can't they think of something? Li Cheng, let me ask you, can you eat those things I gave you? The middle-aged man glanced at the children who were resting on the ground and refused to give them food. He then asked Li Cheng again. I can eat, but the little ones must be disgusting. Unless there is really no food, I can only eat if I don't starve to death. Li Cheng recalled the things that the two children ate. It was indeed a little disgusting. At the same time, he admired Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan even more. The children lying on the ground looked at the adults here, including their families. They kept saying that they were hungry, hoping that the adults could give them something to eat. The adults were really distressed, but they didn't dare to find something for the children to eat. The others didn't eat, so why should they give them food? The imperial nephew was also hungry, so he could only come over and persuade the children to endure until the evening. If they really couldn't, they should drink more water to fill their stomachs first. Why did the two who just passed by have something to eat? I smell it. It's so fragrant. The children who didn't eat seriously in the morning were so hungry that they couldn't bear it anymore. They pointed at Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan's figures and questioned the adults. That's what they found themselves. If you have the ability, you can also find it. Look at the ground. What kind of grass can be eaten? You can eat it. The middle-aged man came close at this time and taught the complaining children a lesson. The children knew that they couldn't afford to offend this person, so they didn't make a sound. They didn't even complain that they were hungry. They took the water bag next to them and drank it. Drinking water was better than being hungry. After drinking the water, they began to run forward again. If they didn't run to the destination, they couldn't eat. They could withdraw. As long as they withdrew, they could eat whatever they wanted. Otherwise, they had to reach the destination today, where there were already tents set up. The adults followed from behind again. They also didn't eat. If the children didn't eat, they also couldn't eat. As they walked, they also asked about the names of the two children and which families they were from. Li Cheng was given a lot of benefits. Finally, he sold Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan. He pointed at the 4 people in the team and said, "They are from their family. Do you see those 4 people? They are the people sent by their family. Those 2 children are the little ancestors of the Zhong Xiaobao and Wang family of Tuqiao village." After he pointed, everyone's eyes fell on the 4 people. Pomegranate led the other 3. Now, they all puffed out their chests and had a proud look on their faces. Just now, they had heard all the praises of the young master and young lady. The honor of the master was also their honor. Pomegranate also thought in her heart, if these people know that the young master and young lady are only 2 years old, they will be even more surprised. It's not wrong to follow such a master. The crowd followed them forward. Some of the children in front were unwilling to continue to follow the children who were shouting that they were hungry, so they quickened their pace. These children's families naturally had to accompany them. Even if there were many people protecting them behind, they couldn't leave their children behind and follow them. As Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan chased forward, more and more adults stayed to accompany the children, but they were all overtaken. When it was 4:45, Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan stopped again. They had overtaken many people. If they continued to walk, they would need to walk for 4 hours. According to this speed, they would arrive at their destination in about 4:45. But they still chose to stop. They cut a few small bundles of grass with a knife, tied them up, and propped them up. They took out 2 blankets from their backpacks, spread one under the grass, and put the other on the grass. The 2 of them got into the blankets, lay down, and closed their eyes to sleep. This was the hottest time of the day. If they continued to walk, the fatigue of the body would increase, and the salt would be lost too quickly. Lying down for an hour to rest, they could still avoid the hot sun. When the adults saw the 2 of them, no one said that the 2 of them would be left far behind. Everyone was now uncomfortably hot. If there was a place like this, it was really good to lie down and rest. They didn't know if the children who walked under the sun could make it to their destination. After a quarter of an hour, Wang Huan and Zhong Xiaobao, who had slept, got up and tied it up. They rushed forward again. They were not worried that they couldn't catch up with the others. They didn't eat at noon, ran so fast in the morning, and walked under the sun in the afternoon. It was good enough that they didn't get heat stroke. How far did they expect to go? The children walking in front of them didn't get heat stroke. There were people watching them all the time. If any of them couldn't stand it, someone would pour some ice water into them. When Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan were almost 2 hours away from their destination, they walked to the front of the group. Only a few healthy children could continue to lead a little. Chapter 153. The sun was setting. When evening came, 2 small figures on the grassland attracted almost everyone's attention. From the beginning, they were at the back of the pack. Now, they were overtaking all the way. These 2 figures had reached the 13th and 14th positions among the 133 people. Especially in the later part of the race, they were overtaken one after another. Those children who were overtaken were not convinced at first and tried to compete with them. However, after running for a while, they no longer had the energy. Basically, all the adults were more shocked than these 2 figures. Once they started running, they did not stop. The other children were so tired that they wished they could just lie there and not move, but these 2 figures did not seem to know fatigue. They were really too tenacious. At this time, the adults were envious of Zheng Jiazhuangzi and Wang Zhuangzi. Having 2 sensible and persistent children like them was what any parent would hope for. Unfortunately, these were not their children. The faces of the parents of the 9 children who had already withdrawn from the competition did not look good. Although another 5 children had withdrawn from the competition, they would only compare their children with the 2 figures, especially when the 2 figures were adults who were 10 years old. Look at them. 2 children who were 5 years old could persist and overtake all the way. Why couldn't a 10-year-old? The food and drinks at home had never been bad. Could it be that they had fed them something else? When they blamed their children in their hearts, they naturally forgot who was the one who not only did not tell their children when they were running like crazy and wasting a lot of energy, but also praised them from behind. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan naturally did not know what others thought of them. They were still running. In front of them, they could already see the tents set up. They looked at each other and nodded. They slowed down slightly from running to walking. When they reached the tents, they could adjust their bodies. Now, they had already surpassed the 8th and 9th positions. Of the 7 people in front of them, 4 were 12 years old, 2 were 11 years old, and 1 was 10 years old. Li Zun was also among them. His Zhuangzi had taken 5 of the top 7 places this time. The children of the villagers could endure hardship and were fed well for a few days. Naturally, they were better than the other children. Young master, you're really amazing. You're actually the first to arrive. Sure enough, no one can compare to you. Young master, I've prepared something for you to eat. Li Zun was also exhausted. As for why he was the first to arrive, it was naturally because someone had let him go first. Originally, there were 2 children in his manor who were faster than him, but at the last moment, they slowed down and let him enter first. The 7 of them had just arrived and were all panting heavily. They didn't even have the strength to speak. They were obviously hungry, but when they saw the food on the table, they were indeed retching. They didn't even want to raise their arms. Hearing the servant's courteous words, Li Zun grinned and waved his hand. He grabbed the bowl of water beside him and poured it into his mouth. He lay on the carpet and gasped for breath. The other 6 people were not much better. After drinking the water, they lay down. As for the food, they couldn't eat it now. Wow, Xiaobao, look, there's so much delicious food. After we're done, we can eat. I see some rotten tendons and beef marrow. The chef between the clouds and the water is so good. He knows what we like to eat. The 7 of them were lying there gasping for breath when Wang Huan and Zhong Xiaobao walked in. Their eyes were fixed on the food on the table. Wang Huan took off her backpack and said happily, "There was beef to eat. It wasn't that easy to eat." Not only did it cost money to buy the beef, it also had to pay a fine. As they spoke, the 2 of them began to stretch their legs to relax their muscles and tendons. From time to time, they would look at the food on the table with an expectant expression. "Who's here now? Are you tired?" Li Zun, who was lying there, heard someone speak. He wanted to show off. After all, he was the first to arrive. Even if he was the emperor's nephew, he still wanted to compete. After asking, he turned his head and suddenly sat up from the ground. You guys, how can it be you guys? That's not right. Why are you guys the first to come?" Li Zun pointed at Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan, who were stretching their legs and didn't look tired at all, and asked with wide eyes. "Why can't it be us?" Wang Huan and Zhong Xiaobao replied almost at the same time. They put down their legs, which were almost done, and went to wash their hands in the basin next to them. They sat down at the table and began to eat. They specifically picked good food to eat, such as the beef bone marrow and the beef tendons that were a bit chewy. As for whether they could still eat good food later, it was none of their business. After eating a few mouthfuls of meat, they didn't eat anything else, especially the soybeans that were fried with meat. The chef knew that the 2 children couldn't eat too hard, so he specially cooked them. This time, not only did the taste become better, but the soybeans were also soft. After the 2 finished the soybeans, they began to eat the vegetables. The nutrition had to be balanced. Today's consumption of their bodies wasn't small, so they needed to replenish it. "Xiaobao, look at that roasted chicken. How good is that roasted chicken? It's golden brown. One look and you can tell that it tastes good," Wang Huan said to Zhong Xiaobao with half a piece of braised meat in her mouth, pointing at the roasted chicken that was cooked the most. Ian, good, it's really good. What he asked just now was useless, so he had to spoon some soup and slowly drink it, waiting for Li Cheng to come. Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan naturally didn't wait for him to continue to ask. The two people finished eating and went out to eat. They digested, took a bath, and went to sleep. Li Cheng hurried in from outside. At the same time, other people came in one after another. After a few people entered this tent, the people who came had to go to other tents. Naturally, they couldn't eat the cow brain, only one portion. Young master, are you looking for this little one? Li Cheng came to Li Zun and helped Li Zun to remove some meat from around the eyes of the sheep and put it on the plate in front of Li Zun, and asked respectfully, Ian, did Zhong Xiaobao and Wang Huan walk here by themselves? Didn't someone take them with a carriage or something? Li Zun picked up a bit of meat, stopped in front of his mouth, and asked before putting it in his mouth. In reply to young master, they came here by themselves. At the beginning, they were the last. Later, when others were tired, they rushed all the way to catch up. In the last part of the road, they ran. Many people didn't want to be overtaken by them, so they also ran. In the end, they were still overtaken by them. Oh, young master, there is one more thing. The two of them slept for a while in the afternoon. At noon, when others were hungry, they made themselves a meal. Maybe it was because they ate something. Otherwise, they would have been so tired at such a young age. Li Cheng replied and told what happened at noon. Looking at young master's expression, he knew that this was really too shocking. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.